United States, it felt like a hurricane was blowing through. But now suddenly conditions have improved in this race filled with tradition. The temperatures are cooling, which is good. The winds are calming, which is great, as we welcome you back to the 123rd edition of one of the most important sporting events on earth. It's the 2019 Boston Marathon presented by John Hancock. I'm Al Troutwig along with Larry Rawson at the finish line. Barbara Hebner, a veteran, out with the women. James O'Brien, equally a veteran, out with the men. Here is the schedule. First, as you can see, the men's wheelchair competitors are already in place. We're about a minute away from seeing their start. Then the women go, then hand cycles and duos. Then finally the elite women at 9:32. The elite women straight up at 10 a.m. here in the United States. Then wave 1, wave 2, waves 3 and 4. There are 30,349 entrants from 118 countries and all 50 of the United States. Marcel Hug, the man with the silver helmet, he has won the last 4 Boston Marathons. He's got to be, Larry, considered the favorite.
He is, and that is Daniel Romanchuk. He will be wearing red when you see him out on the course. He is the part of the young stallions making their impressions in this, just 20 years of age. And here's a man he probably considers old. 20 years older than you. What you are is what many people think is old. Van Dyke is 46 and has won 10 times and almost beat Hug 2 years ago.
And off we go.
This is a real downhill stretch falling right out of Hopkinton, the town of 18,000 people that they have. Just a quaint, wonderful little town. And they really set sail down here. And the gamesmanship begins right here, Al. It really does. The heaviest of those top guys that we identified in the beginning is Ernst Van Dyke. And Van Dyke's goal is to try and get away from Marcel Hug on the downhills and the flat stretches of the first half of this course. The speed that Hug gets up to in his chair, I talked to him about this, is up to 75 kilometers per hour is what his pace is. And he's right now in front of Van Dyke. Van Dyke is heavier, so he's slower through the hills, and usually if Hug's behind, that's where he's got to catch him. Okay,
what's the story in the women's race?
Well, the chair, the woman in white that you see right there, the great Tatiana McFadden, she has borrowed the chair for her coach, a man who is, this chair is a little too big for her. She doesn't have her traditional carbon fiber chair. It broke 5 months ago. They still don't have one, and this is going to slow her down. She tends to fear the hills. It's something she lives with. She tries to make up her victories on the Newton Hills. She's such a strong climber. And can she beat Manuela Schär from Switzerland, who has been dominating over the last year and a half in World Marathon major championship events like Boston?
I can tell you this, everybody has to be wet. That's how hard the rain was coming down.
But it looks like it's calmed down here. These roads are canted a bit, so the water tends to not pool in the middle, but drift off to the side, and they dry pretty quickly.
And now the women reveal their story.
And since the beginnings of this wheelchair competition back in 1975, Boston Marathon, the first to begin that, 1,650 men and women have made this bucket list event a reality here in Boston since 1975. When Bob Hall, in his competition back in 1975, did it in 2 hours and 58 minutes, his wheelchair weighed 22 kilograms. Just amazing weight. These carbon fiber chairs, racing chairs, are now down to 8.5 to 9.5 kilos for men and women.
As they say, it all starts here in Hopkinton with the traditional-looking public library, as Larry said, a town of 18,000. It's the home to the gorgeous Hopkinton State Park. And we can tell you that in Hopkinton, the local pizza place is called Marathon Pizza. And there is Dick and Ricky Hoyt, who were the enchanting tandem who for so many years told everybody what was possible.
And Al, for the first time in 36 years, Dick and Ricky Hoyt won't be at the starting line. Dad has some health issues, so they're passing on this year.
The 2019 edition of the Boston Marathon, presented by our good friends at John Hancock. So, a lot of talk about the weather. Maybe the talk about the weather goes away if it stays like this. It actually feels pretty comfortable outside.
You know, there was a great author that said once, if you don't like New England weather, wait a minute, especially in April, and it's true. It has snowed on this course. We know how miserable. A year ago at this race, the wind chill at the starting line was below freezing by about 2 Celsius. And it stayed right at the freezing level the entire time. We'll document that later if you did not catch the show last year. But this is a very mixed, one of the most mixed days that we've seen weather-wise here when you look back in the history of this race.
And speaking of the history of this race, there are some names that have really made a mark. It's the world's oldest annually contested marathon. The officials of BAA saw the marathon in the first modern Olympics in Athens, Greece in 1896 and brought it here to the United States. How about John A. Kelly? Finished 58 Boston marathons, finally breaking through in 34 and 45. And we will detail the history of what happened in 1975. It feels inevitable now, but not in 1975. 1996. One of the important days in the history of this great race. The historic 100th running of the Boston Marathon took place 23 years ago today, April 15th, 1996. It attracted 38,708 entrants and 35,868 finished the course, which stood as the largest field of finishers in the history of the sport at the time. Uta Pippik overcame a 30-second deficit and severe dehydration to become the first woman of the official era to win the race 3 consecutive times. And now it's that race plus 23, Larry.
It is just, yeah, it goes by fast, doesn't it, Al? I mean, we both were around for that time of the great Uta Pippik, who ran a time in that race that was equal to the very best marathoners today on the starting line.
We are right there at the finish line, next to it, Copley Square. So many activities during the week, live music. And Saturday, the men's and women's elite mile. Watch these close races.
They have high school invitationals and intermediate school event as well. Conditions dried out a bit. There was a few puddles, but so what? This is 3 laps around the the finish line area that the athletes go through. All 10 of the men in the elite division we're showing you had run 3:43 for 1,500 meters or better, some as fast as 3:38. It is a flat 3-lap area, so you're making 4 90-degree turns on each of the laps. It is not a question of time. It turns out to be more of a tactical, strategic race. And the first lap was quiet, but things picked up afterwards. And you're seeing there on the screen on the right, Chris O'Hare, formerly of the University of Tulsa in Scotland, made his move, a European indoor medalist this past indoor season. But Robert Domanek from Mississippi, who had an outstanding career there, came away with a victory, running an extraordinarily good time on a flat course of 4:06 for the mile, and Sam Parsons got third.
You thought that was a good race.
Yeah, this one was really interesting. And Emily Lapari on the right of your screen there, and Sharon Osika with the women running side by side for the first couple of laps. The pace was modest. It really wasn't as fast as the men's, where they took it out. And by the time the race was half over, things began to pick up. Watch the woman in lime. She is considered the queen in American road miles, and that is Heather Kemp from the University of Minnesota. She is the past NCAA indoor 800-meter champion, has very good speed, and 4 women broke away But keep an eye on the woman who's in fourth, and that's Nikki Hills, former NCAA All-American at the University of Arkansas, on the left, with great closing speed, challenged Emily Lapari. The two of them got the exact same time to the finish, but it was by inches. I was right there at the finish line, and it was Hills edging out the former Villanova star, Emily Lapari, collecting the silverware and some cash to boot. Sharon Osika holding on for third place. Congratulations, ladies.
It's all designed to spread the good word of road racing.
The fans loved it. It was really a wonderful, wonderful time. And road race miles have become a big thing in the United States, and they're scheduled in most major cities at least once during the summer months.
Maybe some of these kids will be part of that race one day. We're just below the start line in Hopkinton. And that elite mile was not the only way that the BAA tries to spread the word about road racing. They sent some of their real stars to Elmwood School in Hopkinton, Mass.
I love this, Al. I have the honor of emceeing this every year, and I give it the big rock star treatment with the introduction of everybody. And we fill the gym, and the third and fourth graders study the country of Kenya. As you look at Edna Kiplagat, and that is Joffrey Karui knuckling everybody when Wesley Career, a past champion in Boston. And they study the country of Kenya, learn all about the customs and the geography and what the country's like and the politics. And they come out and they have a day for them there where they learn their national anthem and their native tongue of Kenyan tribal. And afterwards, they take them out to the parking lot and they just have a photo op with the parents and so forth. They televised this on local cable here in the United States. It was eligible to be seen in the country of Kenya, a magnificent country-to-country affair.
And those kids will never watch a race like the Boston Marathon the same ever again.
Very true. And many of them turn out to be track athletes once they wind up reaching high school at Hopkinton.
Not a big surprise. Okay, men's wheelchair race, thinning out to a lead three.
$61,000 at stake in the men's wheelchair competition for men and for women. And if they win the Abbott World Marathon Majors, prize money gets an extra $50,000. That's a once-a-year thing. And he's got some company. I'm not sure if Van Dyke is happy with that. He is definitely the biggest guy there, but he's been unable to shake anybody up in the lead pack. Aaron Pike actually has the lead with the white helmet and the black vest. Notice that it is not raining. The center of the road is wet, but not no puddles and water not sprouting up from their tires. If it rains, and this is probably an interesting decision that the athletes had to make, Al, they must decide whether they're going to wear gloves for the rain or just put their regular gloves on, which they prefer to do. The gloves that they wear, and showers are expected in the area. You can see how hard it rained, as Al was saying earlier, along the race courses. They are now in the town of Ashland. They are about 3K of the race. The first 3K is in the small town of Hopkinton, and you move almost immediately to Ashland. And they're running the tangents of the road. That's why you see them cut over there. Always conscious of where somebody is and not wanting someone ideally to draft off you. But they have to make a decision whether they're going to wear sandpaper. And the women are on the left-hand side of your screen there, and you can see that they are more clustered at this point. Manuela Schar right up there. And that is Manuela Schar from Switzerland taking the early lead. She is a terrific downhiller. She just is fearless on the hills. And I asked her, I told her what Marcel Huget told me about how fast he goes downhill. And she said, I've never timed myself. And she smiled and she said, but I go fast. So it's just an amazing, we have some very steep downhills here, starting with the start. And then in the town of Wellesley, falling out of Wellesley is perhaps the steepest decline on the course. But Schar has been the star here. And after having some real issues with blood clots, Tatiana McFadden, plus breaking her chair over in Berlin, has not been back to quite what she's been able to perform. And the chair is not up to the quality of what she had been racing in before. So not surprising. This is the woman who has a chance to win the Abbott World Marathon Majors wheelchair competition, which is 6 events in a row on a rolling basis. And she is far and away the points leader here, and by all chance will wind up winning this competition.
So we may be getting a break here today, not so much last year. The weather flipped the race upside down, and Yuki Kawauchi, who's quite the character, won the men's race. Desiree Linden, after so many tries here in Boston with frustration, broke through for a win. Marcel Hug was the wheelchair champion for the men, Tatiana McFadden for the women, and all 4 champions returned to defend.
For the 29,960 starters who came from all 50 states and 109 countries, the experience has been etched into their psyche forever. At the start, the temperature was 4 degrees Celsius. The wind, which was in their faces for virtually the entire race, was 35 kilometers per hour, gusting to 50. The conditions varied from a light to a driving rain for the entire race. The wind put the real temperature right around the freezing mark. In the wheelchair race, 4-time Boston champion Tatiana McFadden put 2 layers of garbage bags under her uniform and wore plastic gloves in her victory. When she finished, her legs were purple. Her time, 31 minutes slower than her 2014 victory. The story in the men's wheelchair was very similar. Marcel Hug of Switzerland won, and his time was 30 minutes slower than what he had achieved in the past on the exact same course. The winner of the women's race was American Olympic marathoner Des Linden, who said she seriously thought about quitting early in the race. 23 other elite athletes did drop out, but not Des Linden. She became the first American woman to win Boston in 33 years. The men's race had some wild elements to it. Yuki Kawauchi from Japan and the #2 marathoner in the world, Geoffrey Kirui from Kenya, both decided that despite the fierce headwinds, to push the pace up in the lead. Several times, Kawauchi even surged away from the lead pack. The tactics took their toll on Kirui late in the race, and he began to fade from the lead. The title of Boston Marathon champion would go to Kawauchi of Japan. It was totally unexpected. It was his 4th marathon in 3.5 months. Yuki Kawauchi ran like Superman. We remember those heroic efforts in historic conditions.
It all led to a book called Boston Buddies, forward written by Larry Rawson. And these quotes included what my agent Brett Larner said to me right before the race, kept coming back to me. This is the day you were born for. And in fact, he was. Sarah Sellers, bib 42. It was honestly equivalent to walking outside and seeing a dinosaur. It was that unreal. I kept having to remind myself that I'm feeling the wind and the rain. I'm feeling discomfort, so it must be real. The race director, I felt it was uncomfortable, miserable, and challenging considering everything that could have gone wrong. I'd say the race went off extremely well. And then the author, Vince Ferrallo. I look back on the 2018 Boston Marathon and the amazing journey I had getting there. I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. You know, it's daunting when you see the conditions, but when you get through it, it's a totally different feeling.
Al, the road to success is always under construction. No truer those words than last year. 850 people last year hospitalized. 2,700 people got medical attention.
So you have the American Aaron Pike and Ernst Van Dyke's power. You know, Larry, Ernst Van Dyke is in front. He's got to feel at the age of 46 that he's running out of chances to win again.
You know, I didn't know what to make of it. I have a very good relationship with Ernst. We've had lots of wonderful conversations over his career. And I called him yesterday and I didn't hear back from him. And I didn't know what to make of it. In other words, you know, I don't know whether he's got a game face on or how he's feeling. But nonetheless, he tucks back there. Aaron Pike, I'm a little surprised, is going as well as he is. And ideally, he would like to get away from Pike. He doesn't want him with him when he's going to be climbing the Newton Hills. Pike will try and pull away.
All right, this is moments ago. They're almost touching it.
This looks like a race at NASCAR or something, doesn't it? And maybe the look back is, hey, don't be bumping me. Give me a little space. Now, obviously, When you're leading, it takes more energy to lead. You conserve energy by 1 or 2% by sitting behind and drafting, and that's why you see it this way. Just like auto racing, you conserve your fuel in your car by drafting. That's exactly what goes on here. Last year, I think I was amazed that Kawauchi won, but I thought the loss that happened to Karui occurred because he was so brave and sat out there and pushed the pace and the win. I think he would have won if he tucked in behind people like Aaron Pike is doing now. Just 8 seconds behind is Marcel Hug with a peloton. They have passed the 10K mark for the men already. Now, the conversation going on right now might be, come on, you take the lead for a while. Look at them begin to get up on the two athletes up in front right now. The peloton is closing in.
But it is pretty nervy to tap the back of Babe Ruth, essentially.
Yeah, 10-time winner, by the way, to back up what Al is saying, Ernst van Dijk here. And what an extraordinary athlete this man is to have won that and be up with the elite of the world at 46 years of age.
And you might have to think that this is breaking the spirit of Ernst van Dijk, because it looks like these 3 or 4 are just going right on by.
Yeah, Daniel Romanchek with the yellow helmet that you want. Marcel Hug is in second doing the drafting. Masazumi Soejima, who is a past champion here years ago, another man in his 40s, swinging over on purpose so that Marcel Hug has to hit the win. And he's basically saying, I don't want you to draft off me. And look at Pike continue to just play it smartly when he can, tuck in behind somebody else and let them break any breeze out there. Even if it's a tailwind, you tuck in behind. So Soejima tries to get on the other side of the road, and when he moves back to better terrain, meaning the crown of the road, Hug just buttons right up to him.
But Van Dijk has responded to their surge.
He has. He just tucked in to not be the leader out there. Now let's see, he's moving up here. Tailwinds for able-bodied athletes can be a little deceiving. This race is so fast it may not make a huge difference to these athletes. They may finish this race in somewhere between an hour and 20 minutes and an hour and 28 or 30 minutes at the most. The women just a little off that. And here's a definite move being made by Hug. He spent a couple of weeks in South Africa training in warmer climates, but he said, most of the time I trained at home. Many of these athletes train indoors on rollers when the weather is bad where they live. And the Swiss athletes have a great heritage of great wheelchair competition.
And Hug on that incline may have broken the hearts.
And on the left of your screen, Manuela Schär. Schär says, I'm really not a good climber. I'm not as strong. She's been suffering from tennis elbow, and it's a problem that's been bothering her, so she hasn't been able to do her weight training. And she said, I try and really maintain a good pace. When I'm just going at a very strong pace, it's okay. But it's when I try and lift weights and get stronger that the elbow gives me real problems and irritates me. So I have not been doing the weight training that I would like. So it's on her mind, and it may affect her a little bit in the Newton Hills if anybody is close to her.
So 2 favorites making an early statement in the wheelchair races.
Her chair weighs 8.5 kilos. That's it. Very sensitive, very strong, very firm. The chairs are carbon fiber and they're very hard. She has a 35-second lead over the rest of the pack, does Manuela Schär. She needs to build her lead in case she's worried about Tatiana McFadden, who will gain on her in the Newton Hills.
Overhead through the mist and the clouds over Hopkinton. And cycles and duos set to go there momentarily. The stories that you could get out of this division, endless.
Absolutely correct. Very great point, Al. Some athletes are able-bodied, but they prefer to train and have gotten so that they love doing hand cycling, and it's now been given its own division of athletes to be able to compete in there. Athletes with various disabilities also compete in this division.
You know, for whatever happened to them and whatever story they could tell, it could have easily broken their spirit. But think of how it raises our spirits that they decided not to let that happen.
You know, I was in the Marine Corps, and I was in combat years ago, and what they've learned from, this is the Veterans Administration and everybody associated with former military personnel who have been hit by mines or have been wounded or amputated, is to get the person as quickly as they can fitted for a prosthetic, and then get them involved in activities and sports. And many athletes have taken to things just like this. They're in wheelchair competitions. They're very active in things. Dick and Ricky Hoyt have done this for 36 years in the Boston Marathon. They are legends around the New England area, and they have really inspired many, and built up these divisions by inspiring people to get involved with their children that way.
I always wondered who got more out of the deal, Dick or Ricky.
That's a great point, and but the love is there, and I remember them in the early days. I grew up on this marathon course, and boy, the crowds just cheer the heck out of these guys.
Let's take you back to 8:20 a.m. And this is the scene. That's Des Linden, the defending champion, and it was coming down. But they trudged through it all. They may have headed to the high school for shelter, and things are a lot better now.
And we are live right there now, and Des Linden became the first American woman in 33 years to achieve this. She missed winning Boston by a matter of a couple of seconds going back 8 years ago. It was a tremendous race, and she was stride for stride the entire way. Mescarim Asefa is on the starting line, and there are a number of outstanding Kenyans, a few making their debut here. Sharon Sharap just passed by on your screen, a past champion going back close to 10 years ago, and she ran 2:25 a couple of months ago. Here are the athletes to watch. I've included Des up there. I think it's a long shot for her to have a victory here today. We'll see what happens. Worknesh Degefa has the fastest time in the world by over 2 minutes. And that we show that she's a 2017 champion there, but she's ducked down to 2:17 plus earlier this year. Edna Kiplagat, the absolute queen of women's marathoning, now 39 years of age. We'll tell you more about her. And Asefa also making her debut should be a factor.
The scene when Desiree Linden won this Boston Marathon in 2018 was really unbelievable. In a word, it was absolutely brutal. How shocked were you when she emerged in this picture?
I was amazed at what she achieved, because later she said, I thought about dropping out. She said, I stopped to help Shalane Flanagan in the first half of the race, who had to make a pit stop, and I told Shalane, I'll run in front of you, buck the wind for you so you can get back up in the lead. That told Shalane that she wasn't going to finish. Now, she said, I never felt worse, so I stayed in the race.
Now look at the emotion as she is greeted by her family, coach. Watch the face of the man on the right. He is absolutely overcome that Des pulled this off.
That is her agent, Josh Cox. And he says, my God, my God. That's her husband, who is also a world-class triathlete as well.
There are 66 women in the elite division, and we are about to meet some of them. Let's listen in Hopkinton.
Jordan Hasay coming back from injury. We'll document that for you later. Linden. Betsy Saina from Kenya, who graduated from Iowa State in the United States and had an outstanding career, has moved to marathoning and has done well.
It's 9:30 on a misty day in Boston, Massachusetts, and for the women, it is showtime. 9:30 on the east coast of the United States. Not too many cover-ups. Everybody's comfortable enough weather-wise to go with the singlets. What's in Des Linden's head?
I hope I run well. And she's probably making constant assessments as to the wind at her back. And, you know, do I feel comfortable with the fact it's humid out? What's the temperature? You know, what did I expect? And, you know, maybe she's even asking, I've been here so many times before, stay cool. It's been a life-changing experience for her. I mean, commercial endorsements and appearances all over the place. She changed her coaching situation, which had been the same for 10 years, moved up to northern Michigan, and has a coach, Walt Drent, who's a very respected coach that has taken over the reins of helping her.
You never know. One of the things that she was most happy about was that she got to go to a Formula One race as a celebrity of sorts. She didn't think she would have a chance to do that otherwise. All right, here we go.
I'm interested to see the pace here, Al. I really am. With the increase in temperatures, 6 days ago it was thought it would be cold and windy and ugly, and they still were forecasting rain. Well, it rained, but the fronts moved around. The storm came from the southwest as opposed from another direction, more northerly, and it's warmer here by far. And you've got to be conscious of the fact it's very humid. Take your refreshments. 14 Celsius right there at the start, 76% humidity is high, 15K for the wind. Not too strong right now. The trees are not vacillating all over the place, so that's an interesting factor. It should be a crosswind as opposed to a tailwind out in the towns of Hopkinton, Natick, Framingham, Ashland, that will be coming through the first 4 of the 8 towns. Everybody's holding themselves back a little bit. Notice they're landing kind of on their heels here. They're not up in the balls of their feet. Interestingly, when you get to be world class like that, for men and women, they're lighter than the middle of the pack runners. So their foot strike is on the ground just for 0.2 of 1 second. And that's 30% less than the average runner who gets out there and runs a 5K and has some experience.
Listen to the sound. It's like the military is coming.
Lindsay Flanagan from the United States, Sarah Hall, Ryan Hall's wife, herself an outstanding runner since her days in high school in California, hoping for an outstanding day. She says she's as fit as she's ever been, if not more so. And Jordan Hasse coming back, as I mentioned, from injury. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Barbara Hebner for her first time today. Have you noticed anything, Barbara?
Well, of course, they've just gotten off right now, but one thing we might want to start out with is to wish Sarah Hall a happy birthday. Today is her 36th birthday. One thing, I don't see a lot of breeze. I don't see a lot of movement at all right now here at the start. I don't know, so I don't know right now that that's a factor, but it is humid. So it'll be interesting to watch to see what the women do about hydrating and pace at this point.
Okay, so what is this legendary track like? Well, as you saw, it starts in Hopkinton and begins with a downhill. 5 miles, 10 miles, then the cheering students at Wellesley College. And then the hills of Newton. One of them legendarily called Heartbreak Hill, because that's what's happened there. To the Citgo sign, it's now a landmark. And it tells you you are 1 mile from the finish line on Boylston Street. And it's got to be such, Larry, that when you get to Boylston Street, it feels like it's actually 10 miles.
It is a long stretch there, and of course, the more fatigued you are, the longer the road looks. You're exactly right, Al. And at the high point at Hopkinton at the start, it's 145 meters above elevation, above sea level. And Chestnut Hill, which is Heartbreak Hill, and from a metric standpoint, it is 85 meters. And it's quite a climb. And it makes it particularly tough because it's the fourth hill. It's the last of the four, and it's as long as any of them.
Larry, how would you categorize the keys to this race?
Well, I put down here the leaders will not allow a breakaway in the first half of the race, Al, because when you look at the best times coming in from even earlier this year or last fall's Abbott World Marathon major races, there are a whole cluster of athletes on the women's side very together within a couple of minutes, a minute of each other. And DeGeffa has the best time easily by 2 minutes. They will not let her get away. And I think they're going to watch and see how she handles the Newton Hills. They know she is a terror on a flat course, which this is not. In the last 10K, this looks to be a moderate pace to me, and I thought it would be, but the last 10K could be really quick.
David Monty, who's our awesome assistant here in the booth, said the pace looks gentle.
I like the phrase, yes. It is. It's modest. You can tell for several reasons. I tend to, at this point, I know the leg turnover, and you can get a good idea from looking at that. But look how large that cluster is up front. It's just a very large contingent of women that in many, many other past years, this group, only 5 minutes or so into the race, they're approaching 2K, is half this or even smaller. So it's another way to tell that this is modest.
Back to Barb Hebner. Barb?
I'll be eager to see what this pack of women hits the mile mark in, which we're nearing now. Last year they went through the first mile in that horrible weather in 6:24. So we're going to have a really good idea of how the race will look different this year. Here we're at the mile mark now.
And you can see tucked in the third spot is Des Linden. So she is determined to stay with the early action here in the women's Boston Marathon.
Mare DeBaba in blue behind her, past champion here in Boston. We mentioned Sarah Hall. Jordan Hasse tucked in behind. Let everybody else push the air aside. That's the smart way to run, I think. Just tuck away. Make sure that you don't step on anybody's heel. Don't get tripped. Give yourself room.
And now we're going to begin our discussion of the Abbott World Majors, which is a worldwide marathon competition each year where points are awarded. 25 for a win, but now this year at the halfway point, 8 more points.
Well, they've done that to ensure that times are quick and people are moving fast, and they are. While I have a minute, let me mention that the Boston Marathon has started something that they will call the Para-Athletic Division. Athletes with disabilities will be included, but they're also including vision impairment, lower limb impairment, and upper limb impairment. There will be prize money, and this all starts next year.
And you can see the 20-year-old American Romanchuk is in a tight battle with the 33-year-old veteran Marcel Hoog. So these 8 points that are coming up at the halfway point could be crucial in their battle. One last look behind, perhaps.
And that is Romanchuk you're looking at, just 20 years of age. Started before he went to school, getting involved in different sports and trying them out in a wheelchair. His parents were very encouraging. He's from Baltimore. He joined a club of other disabled athletes, and he has just flourished in this environment. He has a tremendous wingspan. You'd almost look at him on a basketball court and say, this guy's got to be a center. He has just got a very broad shoulders. So when he hits that wheel, he can push the wheel much longer. Look at him try and break away from everybody here. He knows Hoog is very good in the hills, and Romanchuk has been a star lately. He just edged out Hoog in the Chicago Marathon last October by a matter of feet to take the title there. But at 20 years of age, he is the rising star in men's wheelchair competition. He is extraordinarily fast on the track at 800 meters and 1,500 meters, and those are important measurement sticks, Al, as to speed.
And that was quite a burst to be the first one to the halfway mark. There you see it in the town of Wellesley. So he increases his lead.
Halfway they reached, covering, that's amazing, covering 21 kilometers in 37 minutes and 34 seconds. That's a wow.
But for all he did, here comes Hoog again.
That is Soejima, I believe. Masazumi Soejima missing out on 8 points. He just goes sailing past Romanchuk right after they pass through Wellesley Center. Soejima, there are several other good Japanese athletes here who have come over to compete here. But he's got the most experience on this course of the young Japanese stars.
You know, these days we take a race like this for granted. But back in 1975, no one certainly did. And then a man named Hall happened. In 1975, American Bill Rogers collected his first of 4 Boston Marathon titles. That same year, West Germany's Leanne Winter established a women's world best of 2:42.24. But the biggest story that year may have been written by Bob Hall, as he became the first officially recognized participant to complete the course in a wheelchair. Hall was granted permission to enter the race, provided that he covered the distance in under 3 hours. Hall finished in 2:58 even, signaling the start of the Boston Marathon wheelchair division. How heavy was that wheelchair?
It weighed, let me do my math right, 22 kilograms.
Wow.
And the wheelchairs now are about 40 to 45% lighter.
So some storylines to watch. Yuki Kawauchi and Desiree Linden back to defend their titles, as is Marcel Hoog and Tatiana McFadden. And will the weather be a factor again right now? It's certainly better than it was an hour and a half ago.
I think it's fine, Al. I really think it's fine. It worked out well. The lightning, which was in the area before we came on the air, seems to have dissipated, headed out to sea. It will be warmer than the athletes hoped. It is more humid than they expected, but nonetheless, it's livable conditions. Take your fluids. We'll see what happens. And as I say, the wheelchair races are over within an hour and a half, and so some of them don't even stop for fluids.
We all remember the horror of 2013 every time we revisit Boylston Street. 2014 was definitely part of the healing. The 2014 Boston Marathon marked an emotional triumph for American Meb Keflezighi. Meb was spurred on by the memories of those impacted by the tragic events at the 2013 Boston Marathon, writing the names of those killed on his race bib. Then he turned in a performance that would make him the first American man to win Boston since Greg Meyer in 1983. He crossed the finish line first on Boylston Street in a personal best of 2:08:37.
His father sat the family down when they arrived in San Diego when Meb was so young. We're talking 10, 12 years of age. And he said, we are going to get up at 4:30 in the morning, all of the kids, and we're all going to study English. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. I want you all to excel, and they all have with college educations.
He's one of the great ambassadors in the history of the sport. And earlier today, Meb assembled with some of the volunteers for pictures. He does that an awful lot, wearing a Meb Keflezighi New England Patriots jersey.
He is such a class act. I really mean that. His wife, Jordanis, the family, they are just awesome emissaries of the sport. And they were from Eritrea and escaped the civil war over in their country. His dad used to take him out to the fields, and they slept out in the fields so the rebels would not get into his house and take him to fight. Women on a 2-hour, 29-minute pace right now.
But it looks like the situation at the front is largely the same. Sarah Hall from the United States. Right behind her is Des Linden.
Notice how things have thinned out just a little bit as they picked up the pace. It was around 2 hours and 32 minutes after the first 1,500 meters of the race, and now they've dropped that pace down to 2:29, and I think we'll find that it will only get quicker.
And now, just like the men moments ago, the women are approaching the halfway point in the Abbott World Majors. So they're going to battle for their 8 points.
And Manuela Schär looking well clear of everybody at this point. We'll see what happens in the Newton Hills for her. But look at the lead, Al, that she's got over Tatiana and everybody else in the point totals.
Yeah, 116-40 for McFadden in second place, and there's no one else in this picture right now.
That's true, and the total points get awarded the extra $50,000 for the top wheelchair athlete, male and female, in Berlin coming up in 2019. So she's closing in on that, and after this event, Berlin is next, so she'll really be the winner. Sarah Hall out in the lead. By the way, she's not running over her head, I don't think, here, Sarah Hall. There's a good chance she could finish in the 229, maybe 228 area. She's just doing what her own thing, so to speak, but the rest of the athletes are following along.
I think, as you mentioned before, Larry, she is coached by her husband, a man we've watched run for years, Ryan Hall.
And he's got the fastest time by an American ever on this course, getting under 2 hours and 5 minutes on it back on the day when they had dry conditions and a great tailwind. And he went out and just tore up the course the first half. He really was extraordinary that day.
And back we go to Manuela Schär through the puddles from the rain earlier today, approaching the halfway point of the race in Wesley, Massachusetts. And there it is. She got it. 8 more points to bolster her lead.
Her halftime, 42 minutes. She covered 21 kilometers in 42 minutes and 54 seconds, Al. De Geffa, happy and looking very comfortable, by the way. The way she's just running there, it's almost like she's on a track running or on a trail someplace. She's up on the balls of her feet and bouncing more than most. Look at the difference in the stride and how it's an even shuffle for Sarah Hall and the bounce to the stride of De Geffa. They run quite differently. There's no right or wrong. It's just different.
So the women are underway, the wheelchair race is in full swing. The men are coming up here in the 123rd Boston Marathon. Now the women's field continues to thin out. You see some of the runners falling off the back. We started with 66, and it looks like this lead group is about 20 or so.
Sally Kipyego, originally from Kenya, came to the United States, got her nurse's training and her certificate, got married here in the country, has a child, is now a U.S. citizen, went back over to Kenya and spent months and months training over there. She is so talented. She's got an Olympic silver medal in the 10,000 meters. She said, I don't think I'm quite ready for a brilliant time today, but she said, I am definitely getting there.
Look at Bob on the left-hand side. I've always marveled at how a runner that short could keep up with the runners that have such long legs that cover more ground.
Well, one of the things that I've talked about a little bit is height and weight. And the Ethiopians tend to be very, very small, and many of the Kenyan women the same way. Dibaba is approximately 1 meter 68 centimeters, somewhere in there. I'll check that to be sure. But they're tiny, and 42 kilograms is their weight. So you're carrying less. It makes it easier. And if you've got the raw speed that a taller person has, it's an advantage to be light. They train at very high elevation. First 5,000 meters covered in 17 minutes and 32 seconds for the ladies. And this is a great 3-shot. You can see the lead of Shar as she is pulled away from the rest of the field. We'll try and give you an idea of how far ahead she is. And Romanchuk takes a sneak back there, the man in the red on the right-hand side, to see how clear of everybody we are. The monitoring of how you are and where you are is always important.
Shar is actually passing some men in this wheelchair race, and it looks like we're starting to have some shakeup in the women's marathon.
Oh, this is interesting. Wow. DeGeffa just kind of said, this is too slow for me. And 2:17 ranks him easily among the top 10 women's time, all time, that she ran in Dubai in January. So she's feeling very comfortable, and she's putting on a surge here. And notice how others have responded after they pick up their water bottles and get their drinks. Those are special drinks that the athletes have of their choosing, and they are frequently marked. And for example, Jordan Hasse on the right of the screen just went over. She knows the table to go to get her water bottle. It's marked table 7. She's told at a meeting the day before, that's where your water bottle will be with the drink that you like. It could be all kinds of sports drinks, but some things that agree with you and agree with your system that you've learned to drink and practice on the run. So notice them, they take it gradually and take it in because they're gulping air at the same time.
Now the feed station can often shake things up a lot. It did that time, but now there's a regrouping.
You know, imagine how normal resting, you sit there and you're watching a basketball game or something on television, the normal adult breathes 9 to 12 times in a minute. On the run, these athletes have to learn how to drink and swallow, taking between 45 and 55 breaths in a minute. And you're trying to gulp this stuff down and make it smooth. And that's why they actually do, in practice, they make sure that they can handle this when they're in serious oxygen debt.
So the time so far, a lot faster than last year, and that's not a surprise at all.
You know, I don't want to forget this, but I want to give a shout out to all of the officials at the BAA, David McGilvery, the meet director, the CEO, Tom Grilk, Mary Kate Schaefer putting these fields together, Chief Operating Officer Jack Fleming, Dr. Michael O'Leary and the board. This is a huge undertaking, as you could imagine, and the meetings go on all year. And to the thousands and thousands, over 9,000 volunteers helping to make this such a great success that the Boston Marathon is.
Some digital breakup on a day like this, no surprise. And the men are slowly but surely, by my watch, about 7 minutes away.
Brian Schrader from the United States, who's run 2:13, is in the race. And there you see Joffrey Karui, quite a guy and an interesting person. He's achieved so much His younger brother, got him started in running and had real success. And Joffrey said, I don't like to run. I don't want to run. His brother said, just try it. And it took a while to convince him, but he had success right away. And here he is, a past Boston Marathon champion.
Back to both wheelchair races. Manuel Ashar with a big, big lead. And Romanchuk, he's been impressive here.
Yes, but I'm kind of not surprised. I thought he would be up in the top 3 easily. I didn't know whether he could take the measure of Hoog. And Van Dyke was a bit of a wild card today. We'll see what happens.
How about this, Larry? They started 2 minutes apart. They're still 2 minutes apart, which means that Shar is going as fast as the men.
That is so impressive. Is that correct? This is just amazing. Manuel Ashar. This is just striking. For the woman who grew up in Switzerland as an able-bodied person, actually did a little bit of running as a young child. I don't mean in races so much, but just did some, as she said, just a little bit of running. At 8 years of age, went to a playground and got severely injured with a spinal cord injury and took up wheelchair competition. And look what she has achieved.
Yeah, she's injuring some egos.
Good line. Absolutely. And these are invited athletes.
All right, the women seem to be separating possibly a little bit. A very strong lead 3. 25 feet. So this race revealing itself, we get set to go back to Hopkinton. The men are getting into position.
For assembling such an elite field of men, some of the fastest long-distance runners in the world.
Everybody's got to be in a special place. Mary Kate Shea, who does such a great job of inviting these athletes here and getting them to say yes.
There's Yuki wearing yellow. Keep that in mind. We'll see much more of him. Sise Lema from Ethiopia just off to his right, our left. And Joffrey Karui, who finished second last year. Coming into this race, he was ranked number 2 in the world for his exploits in 2017. Not only winning Boston, but becoming the IAAF world champion in the marathon as well.
Yuki is quite the character. One year he raced 12 marathons. One time he raced a half marathon in a ninja costume.
Two-time Boston champion and 2018 New York City winner from Ethiopia, Lalisa Desisa. The 2017 Boston and World Championships Marathon winner from Kenya, Joffrey Karui. And returning to defend his title, the 2018 Boston Marathon champion from Japan, Yuki Kawauchi. Just a reminder, the men's course record, 2 hours, 3 minutes, 2 seconds by Kenya's Jeffrey Utah in 2011. No pressure, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jacques Leduc. 1 year ago, here's how the pictures unfolded in the men's version of the Boston Marathon. Again, the weather just took the race and flipped it upside down.
I was stunned at the fact that he won. He took off at such a pace for the first 2K. It was crazy. And then he folded back in. Then he surged away. Then he folded back in. And then they ran together with Karui and the others. And then he surged again. It was unbelievable. And then Karui died. I mean, really died in the last 2K of the race. And it was all Yuki at the finish. His 4th marathon in 3.5 months. And in January, the first of those 4, the temperature was 0. in the United States, and it was just an unbelievable performance.
We were talking earlier, Yuki's got a new sponsorship deal with Yamaha Pianos, and of that he said, I hope to have a harmonious relationship.
You think somebody wrote that?
I don't know.
Great phrase, though. Well, he's played some great music out on the roads, I must say. He ran 17 half marathons last year on top of 12 marathons and a few other assorted races. I've never heard anything like that. And he won 17 of the races last year. He actually was holding down what was said to be a full-time government job and traveling to these. And he said, my time was so precious that I used the races as very, very hard training sessions.
And right about now we ask the question, who wants to be on television?
Are you talking about some guys who like to go out and really sprint and get seen right away? There's Yuki.
Great shot. Well, Yuki's right at the front.
Drones do great things, don't they, as far as sports go these days? He's running up there with Hiroto Inoue from Nagasaki, Japan. They no doubt know each other and came over together, is my guess. Hiroto is the real deal, by the way. One of the fastest in the last generation of Japanese marathoners. He's run 2:06 and change, and that is really top-notch stuff.
And just to make things accurate, drones are great, Larry. You're right. This is a helicopter.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't think the helicopter would be that low, or maybe they just used a lens, right? Yep.
Look at the lens. Zoom in. It's a little higher than we thought. The time checks now for the women in their marathon race are picking up. Now the first wave starting at Hopkinton. They've had a long wait. A little over 30,000 runners here today.
1897. They decide to have the race. In those days, it started in Ashland. They advertised for it. The Boston Athletic Association was in existence. They got 18 entries. 15 people stood on the starting line, and 10 finished. And Al, to show you how people didn't train in those days to run long distances like this, it was 10 years before they had 100 entries in the Boston Marathon, which started in 1897.
The reason this first wave starts 2 minutes after the elite men is so that they can keep the elite race clean.
And you can see that it is warm at the starting line. People are down to their singlets, and some people were just throwing away some additional stuff that they had. Yeah, Joan Benoit Samuelson, the 1984 Olympic champion. There she is, right there at the start. What a legend she is in the sport, and the matriarch of the sport in the United States. She faced the great Ingrid Christensen, Rosa Moda, Greta Weitz, and pulled away in the 84 Olympic Games early, ran alone, and won that title.
She's out there with the masses because she can.
Her goal is, she said, I want to run Boston this year because it's the 40th year since I wound up setting the American record back in 1979 of 2 hours and 35 minutes. And I want to try and run within 40 minutes of that time now that I'm 40 years older. What an accomplishment. She's never lost her zeal, her fire to be a great runner.
And moments ago here at the finish line on Boylston Street, underneath the great library in his big, powerful Infinity, Meb Keflezighi. At the finish line, he's going to receive a commemorative medal. And he is the perfect man to be the Grand Marshal.
Greeted by former president of, I should say CEO of the BAA, Guy Morse, on the board of the BAA.
You had to see how nervous Guy was in the lobby of the hotel watching the torrential rain as everybody boarded the buses this morning. And this is Meb right here. Classic Meb.
He is a rock star in the United States, deservedly so. He really is. He ran 4 minutes and 5 seconds for the mile when he was in high school. Was at least 8 times an NCAA champion at everything from cross country on. I want to say 4-time Olympian, I'm guessing. And, of course, Olympic medals, was 4th in the marathon at the 2012 London Olympics.
The plaque very simply said, "Thank you, Meb." And one of your favorites, Larry, is trying to pull away here in the women's race on the left.
You're right, Al. That's a good point. The other two have the pack is letting her go. I'm surprised here that this early that this is occurring. I thought Edna would be close. The only thing that that Edna fears when I look at her record over the years, she has not run well when it rains. And she just has a fear of it. She'll admit to it. But after that, she is tough. She has done her best workouts ever at 39 years of age. I had that conversation with her, talked with her agent, Brendan Riley, and they just said she is really fit. So let's see what happens. It doesn't look like this is too strong a surge to really be maintained for a long time. 12-second lead, great graphic.
Worknesh Tejefa from Ethiopia.
I was just going to say, I wonder if she's passing up a water station is Tejefa. We'll see. Notice how frequently they just take sips and coordinate that with their breathing.
Larry, competitively, what's the relationship between the Kenyan runners and the Ethiopian ones?
There's a competition. I mean, are they friendly? Sure. I mean, if you put the Yankees and the Red Sox in the same hotel, I'm talking about American baseball, or Man U and Manchester, I'm not, or Liverpool, to use the soccer people. Maybe the guys get along just fine when they're away from the pitch. But mixing in the hotels, they don't hang out together. They tend to hang with their countrywomen in this case. But it is very competitive, and on the national level, it's extraordinarily competitive, especially in running, which is the far and away best sport of each of the countries. Women's 10K, a solid 33 minutes, 58 seconds for the first 10,000 meters. And there is Mari Dababa hanging with Sharon Cherop, and the rest of the pack, including Edna Kiplagat, is just giving these women quite a bit of room.
Barbara Hebner, what are you seeing? And we had a little audio difficulty that we'll try and solve.
I mentioned height and size and weight. I marvel at how light these women really are. 1 meter 59 centimeters is how tall Tejefa is, and she weighs just 42 kilograms. Wow. And other Ethiopians are that light. The Ethiopians and Kenyans have great track speed. That and their size and altitude training, Al, I think are the keys to their brilliant success, and the passion and will to succeed, obviously with hard workouts that are every single day. Tejefa trains up at about 2,800 meters of elevation. This is an interesting stat I went back and dug up. Go back to 1977, before the East Africans were athletes. Look at the average height of the top 10 men. There were no Ethiopians or Kenyans in there, or any East Africans, and look at the size difference in kilograms that they weighed in 1977. And they got fast. They had track-trained athletes that were very fast at 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters in the 2000s and up. And the weight has dropped down 9 kilograms for the top 10 in the world. They are light and fast, and they are well trained these days, putting in anywhere from 150 to 200 kilometers a week in training.
The women are emerging from one of the jewel towns, New England towns, Framingham. Next stop, Natick.
The wind is coming a crosswind here, so it is not pushing them yet. In the back is what we're told, what wind is there is out there.
Back to the men. It looks like there's still a pretty solid pack, even up. So 10 minutes and 14 seconds into the men's marathon in the 123rd running of the Boston Marathon. Well, our defending champion Yuki is saying he wants to be part of whatever's going to happen here in the early part of the marathon. Men are on a faster pace, by the way, than the women.
Well, they should be, of course.
I mean, a faster pace than last year.
I put Yuki in here because he's the defending champion, but the odds on him winning are hugely long. His lifetime best 2 hours and 8 minutes and change. And you've got the likes of Lalisa de Sisa, Joffrey Karui, and Lawrence Chirono, I think, are three to watch here that have the best chance to finish up on the podium. Karui, very fit. De Sisa says that he's doing his best workouts that perhaps he's ever done, and certainly over the last couple of years. And Chirono has been killing it lately. Look at that, 6 marathons, and he's won 3 of his last 4.
So this marathon is oozing with experience.
It is. You're exactly right with past champions that are here, Al, and there are many. Mary Kay Shea likes to give credit to people who have won here and want to come back. The men's pace, very solid, 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 36 seconds as they have passed the 3K mark. We'll see what the 5K brings. But they're averaging on the women's side 3 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer, a 2:27 pace. So that is becoming more honest as they move along here. They certainly started out in a cautious way, but it was Worknesh de Geffa who decided, this is too slow. In away from Japan on the left of the screen in red. Yuki Kawauchi, the defending champion, running astride of him in wearing the yellow vest. The pack still holding this pace very easily.
To the wheelchair races, you know, again, Manuela Schar is keeping right up there with the men's pace. She's been an absolute star today. Her record is 1:34.06, and we project her to be within just ticks of maybe breaking that.
And the course record a little while ago, Al, we'll check on this further, but she was slightly under the course record of 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 17 seconds, which leads me to believe that number one is correct, but number two, look at her passing other men. I don't think I've ever seen this in the numbers of athletes that have been passed by either Tatiana McFadden or Schar or anybody else on this course. They had a head start by 2 minutes, and she is just whipping up on those guys.
This is in the Newton Hills. This is where legends are made, and look at what she's doing to these male competitors.
I agree. This is a wow.
I mean, they have to be looking across the road and thinking, wait, what?
A dream is a gift you give yourself, and Manuela Schar is doing that. If you could believe this, over the rest of this world-class field, she has now a 6-minute lead in the Newton Hills. And she's got probably something like 7,000 to 8,000 meters left to go. Does that say 21 or 20? I couldn't quite see what 21 miles or 20. We'll know in a second whether she has reached the crest of Hardberry Hill. If she veers to the left, we'll see.
Daniel Romanchuk, the 20-year-old. You don't see anybody else in the picture, and that is pretty surprising.
Romanchuk coached at the University of Illinois, which has just a sensational athletes with disabilities program with various wheelchair sports. Blankney himself, an outstanding athlete in wheelchair competition, coaches Tatiana McFadden and Romanchuk, who moved from Baltimore and got a scholarship to go to the University of Illinois, the main campus in Champaign, and they have a great program for athletes with disabilities.
Okay, DeGeffa continues to lead, but you can see she has really made a big move here. Let's see if we can retry. We'll get to Barb Huebner in just a moment. But this is some serious separation here.
The men holding on to a 2-hour, 8-minute pace, and DeGeffa pushing the pace definitely now. You can look at the stride, the quick cadence. Arm swing is more accentuated as she drives a little faster. And the peloton has been losing some ground to her. They're keeping her in sight, but nonetheless, she has pulled away from them a little bit. She is on right now somewhere around 2-hour, 26-minute pace, I would guess. Her lead is 31 seconds at this juncture of the event, 45 minutes into the race.
Larry, I think if that woman in the wheelchair, one of the duo competitors, she is playing in the same stadium right now with this woman who's running in front of her. She's playing a major league game. Awesome feeling.
It must be great. It really is.
45 minutes in the town of Natick. As we revisit the map, we pass the Ashland Clock Tower, the Framingham Train Depot, and this is the town of Natick. And this is how New England gets defined. By the old meeting house that runs next to the river, the patriotism that's constantly on display. This is Massachusetts at its best.
You know, Al, I grew up here and I moved away many years ago for a variety of reasons, business-wise, but this is a phenomenal state. It's got the grittiness of the Revolutionary War. It's got the courage and the grind of the Celtics and the Bruins, and the teams reflect pretty much the personalities of the people that live in this great state. Boston is a bucket list place for all of you who are listening to try. If you're coming to the United States, visit Boston. Within a distance of 40K of downtown Boston, I looked this up, there are 81 colleges and universities. It is a vibrant mecca, and the fans are tremendous, and do they ever love the Boston Marathon. There on the left of your screen is Edna Kiplagat, who I mentioned is the matriarch of the women's marathoning worldwide, amongst the very best. 39 years young, and she is very talented. She ran a race, really a time trial that was 30K in her country before she came over here, and ran it 1 minute faster than anything she's ever done, and it was done at very high altitude where she lives. You know, that says a lot. This woman, I would expect to eventually move back up there. Let's see what happens. But she is trying to tow the rest of that field to keep within striking distance of Worknesh DeGeffa.
We are at the mercy of the elements here today in our coverage, and right now the elements are winning, but we have a way of getting back.
Those who dare to fail miserably are destined for greatness. And right now, DeGeffa is trying to live by that principle. as she is pulled away out there. This man is pulling away too. This is Daniel Romanchuk as he is coming into Boston, crossing over the bridge that will take him into Kenmore Square, close to victory.
And this is really the first time you can see the skyline of Boston. This is when you can really feel it. If you see those light stanchions across there, highway there,
right,
that's Fenway Park, the home of the Boston Red Sox. Pretty soon he'll go past the Citgo sign, the landmark that'll tell him he's 1 mile to the finish. This is starting to feel real for him.
Oh, it's real. You know, the guy is, as I mentioned, he is really the future of this sport so far. Hoog has had very good training, is fit, and Romanchuk, with his no doubt tremendous power and strength, negotiated the hills beautifully. This is a downward area. That's why he's not hitting his push rim. He'll do it to accelerate, but he can rest here because he's coming down off that hill.
He is dusting two of the great legends in this division.
A dream is a gift you give yourself, and look what Romanchuk is giving to himself right now. And Shar is living that dream too. They are the closest of these 4 championship divisions right now to the finish line. Look at him power away.
Listen to his arms sound like pistons on the wheels. So a big move in the women's race. The men have a pretty large group still, but Daniel Romanchuk is all by himself.
He started with basketball, went to archery, actually tried the triathlon, skiing, and track and field. And when Adam Blinkney saw his ability, offered him a scholarship, he is focused now on this. He is interested, by the way, and one of the guys that was up in the lead with him, Aaron Pike, introduced him to snow skiing. And he has done that and likes that in the off season. And we'll see if he tries to become a dual Paralympian. But nonetheless, his focus most of the time is on seeing what he can achieve in his wheelchair.
Onto Hereford Street. Boylston just ahead.
These are great, great athletes. You know, we've got LeBron James in basketball and great soccer stars, etc. But in a wheelchair like this, when he takes to these other sports with his strength and his wingspan and his power.
But a star is being born here today, right?
Well, it's been, in the last year, this has been growing. I mean, Chicago, New York, other foreign marathons overseas, he's done well. But yes, he has been shining brightly here today, and I think his future at 20 years of age is terrific. And you're seeing a star being developed here in Boston. He is, what, 600 meters from the finish line right now. He was named All-American in the Paralympics in everything from the 100 meters in the United States to 5K, and in the discus, javelin, and shot put. How's that for an athlete? Daniel Romanchuk.
Crowds at the finish line continue to build. See some of these volunteers trying to make sure he goes the right way. Well, he went the right way today.
He did. Congratulations, Daniel Romanchuk.
And there he comes across. The finish line never felt so good. 1:21:37 unofficially. And the bells ring for him. The traditions in this race are awesome.
Isn't that cool? There's the church just past the finish line. This is, of course, orchestrated. It's been going on for years as the churches salute to the winners of each category.
To show you how dominant, this is Hereford Street, just beyond Boylston, and there's not another competitor on it. Wow.
And we've got the best here. You've got the best in Marcel Hug, who is leading the World Marathon, the Abbott World Marathon Majors. Just, you know, what a dominating performance by a 20-year-old. Right now, we're getting word that Romanchuk had a 2-minute lead on second place. And this is Masazumi Soejima from Japan, turning in with about 600 to 700 meters to go here.
Compare the way he looks physically to the way Romanchuk looked.
He's got a different motion with his arms. I'm guessing here, but I see a lot more fatigue. You know, it's always more painful in second place, Al.
Oof.
And watch him just rest with his arms down here. He knows he's got the victory, but, you know, the drive of athletes, particularly at this level, never stops. And you just keep pushing as hard as you can. Think of what you saw coming down the home stretch just 2 to 3 minutes ago with Romanchuk. He was beating on that push rim constantly all the way down. That is a hand cyclist, so there are two different categories that you see in your picture right there. The key is second place here for Soejima.
Third, fighting it out, coming down the final stretch. Here they come, bring them home.
Some of the hand cyclist finishers intermingled.
It's our first hand cyclist.
And here comes Soejima.
Tom Davis.
1:24:29. We go to the finish line to talk to our first champion of the day. Here's Scott Wally.
Thanks, Al, with Daniel Romanchuk. Congratulations. You know, two of the last 3 years we've had photo finishes, so this is a bit of a surprise for us. Was it for you?
I mean, I knew it was possible. It's a matter of just everything coming together. Just overall, just glory to God for the opportunity to race today.
You were all alone from the halfway point. How surprised were you about that?
I had planned to put in a surge around there. I didn't know what to expect from it. It just ended up breaking the pack up, and I decided just try and go with whoever was lead, and then we, somewhere in, I think, Newton, I separated from them. So not expected, really.
You finished third last year, 4 minutes off the win. What did you learn in last year's race, or could you learn anything in that horrendous weather?
Be prepared for anything. You never.
They're not a factor today, really, was it?
Not too much. A little bit at the start. It was raining, but a lot better than last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Al?
He's barely out of breath. There's Marcel Hug, the 4-time Boston Marathon winner. Just not his day today. And here is a look at the Abbott World Marathon Major standings. Romanchuk has a nice lead over Marcel Hug with the 25 points he'll get here today.
Something stuck on the wheel of Marcel Hug. I don't know what the story is there. But look at his left. As you look at the camera, look at the right wheel. It might not bother him at all, but there's just something there that's not normal. The winning time for Romanchuk just outside of 3 minutes beyond the course record here, set under better conditions because of the humidity and maybe a tailwind when that course record was set, as I recall.
A third place wheelchair finisher.
$25,000 goes to Daniel Romanchuk, $15,000 for second and $10,000 for third. Men are almost at the 10,000 meter mark here in this race, and two of the people we highlighted for you are up there. On the left, running for the U.S. Army, Elkanah Kabet, now an American citizen who's been in this country for many years, Lawrence Chirono, and Joffrey Karui in the middle.
We check in with James O'Brien. James?
Well, we've just passed the 6 mile mark unofficially in 29:21, and as you can see, There have not been any moves of major significance. Of particular interest, though, in contrast to close to the start time when it was overcast and looked like it might rain again. Now, actually, the sun is kind of coming out, and it's getting quite warm for these runners. So I think the contrasting conditions may be a big significant factor in the outcome today. But right now we have a pack, as you can see, of probably 20 runners, and everybody that you would expect is in there, including defending champion Kawachi from Japan.
Men running at a 2-hour, 8-minute pace for the finish line. And they've been averaging out there about 3 minutes and 3 seconds per kilometer. This is the time you're frequently asking yourself, you're into the body of the race, you're a little less than 1/4 of the way. How do I feel? What's going through my mind? Is this pace okay? Is there any wind, etc.? The woman right now who's the shining star so far, Ethiopia's Worknesh Tegefa, with a 77-second gap over second place and the peloton behind that.
And we check in with Barbara Hebner. What have you seen, Barbara?
Well, if anything, that gap is growing. I can't see anything behind her anymore, and she can't see anything behind herself either, because she took a look back over her right shoulder at about the 15K mark or something and saw nothing but empty road. Interestingly enough, she didn't see this course at all before the race. Not only has she not run here before, she didn't take a course preview. She'd only seen it on TV. But she said on Friday at the press conference that nonetheless, she and her coach have been trying to emulate the course in their training just by knowing its elevation. And she said that day, she said, I come ready to win.
It's obviously worked out, but why on earth would you not do a course tour?
I don't know the answer to that, Al. But Barbara, give your thought.
Well, a lot of the Ethiopians will tend not to want to see a course before they run it. It isn't all that unusual for those runners.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Barbara. Is that true of Kenyans as well? I frankly don't get in, I haven't gotten into that aspect of it with them, so I'm interested in your thoughts.
It seems to be less so for the Kenyans.
I don't know. I just find that crazy. Very Lewis and Clarkian.
Yeah, a lot of people died in California going over those mountains.
Yeah, but the people who came second knew where they were going. Now the sun is coming out. And this is just one of the epic performances we have seen in Boston. Manuela Schär, no one else in the picture. We mentioned earlier, a lot of bruised male egos behind her. So her record is 1:34.06. We projected this to be extremely close to that. She looks pretty fresh to me. How about you?
I think she's doing just fine. You know, she's clear of the rest of the field. And we can't see, I don't think there's anybody that we can see behind. Well, there is a wheelchair there. Let's see what happens. Yeah, you know, to the point we brought up before, that could be men that she's passed.
And there could be more to pass.
Wow. What can you say? This is a wow. This is extraordinary. I've never seen this in women's wheelchair competition, having done all those events, that a woman has passed so many men that have had a 2-minute head start. I am just so impressed. Her lead right now, Al, is 5 minutes over the greats that are still in this race, the talent that's here.
Including a defending champion.
That's correct, in Tatiana. Now, her wheelchair is maybe something that does hold her back. There's just no question about that. I don't know why, you know, over that period of time, she hasn't been able to get a carbon fiber chair, but nonetheless, she hasn't. And correct me if I'm wrong, we're in Kenmore Square right now.
That's correct.
Switzerland's history goes back to the great Hans Frey and Franz Niedelsbach, and the history of having great wheelchair athletes is extraordinary in their country. And while we're at it, this is very impressive. Elkanah Kibet has decided that the pace was a little too slow at 2:08, and they train out in Colorado Springs. He's part of the U.S. Army elite program that they've got out there, and they've got a host of Americans that train there. And Kibet is in the Army and is looking very comfortable. Now, we'll see. He's on lifetime best performance easily, but he liked the altitude in Ethiopia and Kenya. The American athletes, many of them train either at Mammoth in California, Flagstaff, Arizona, up at very high altitude. We're talking over 2,000 meters. And Colorado Springs is the same way, up at about 2,400 meters of elevation. So they get the benefit of much thinner air, maybe 23% thinner is the oxygen level up there. It creates the body to have more red blood cells, so you oxygenate your body better when that red blood cell count, which is up, comes down to sea level.
Underneath Massachusetts Avenue, top of the screen. So, Larry, we could be seeing a host of career-changing days today.
Yes, we could, Al. We could. There's major things going on. I mean, if she doesn't have a good day today, and there's no rain, so there's nothing that maybe bothers her. She has run well. I'm referring to Edna Kiplagat, who has run well in the heat. I thought she would not let DeGepa get away, but DeGepa keeps increasing the pace. But in her last marathon, Edna Kiplagat ran 2 hours and 21 minutes at her age. And here her training sessions have been better. Wow. Let's get back to Manuela here and salute her.
She's getting a lot of support. Her record, 1:34.06.
Manuela Schar home, ladies and gentlemen, as she's coming down the stretch here.
Well, tennis elbow did not bother her today, that's for sure. A brilliant performance by Manuela Schar.
It's going to be close.
The women's course record. Schar has this under better conditions, 1 hour and 28 minutes and 17 seconds. And she's outside of that by a number of minutes, but it's stunning, the margin of victory.
Today, Manuela Schar goes side by side with some of the men, and in fact passes many of them, en route to this 2019 Boston Marathon Wheelchair Championship. And just as it did for Romanchuk, the bell tolls for her.
Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Not at all.
Thanks for this.
Oh, the weather or the bells?
No, the weather.
But the bells mean you won.
The bells are nice too.
The bells mean you won.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
Some raining when you left?
No.
Not bad?
No.
How about the puddles on the road? Not bad?
No, it was okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
not so
Oh, good.
bad.
That's great.
Yeah.
Feeling good to recover. We're going to have a little national anthem for you. Yeah.
Well, the crowd has decided to pull back up. Actually, what I think happened is after throwing in a 2-minute 55-second kilometer and maybe doing that for 2K, Elkanah Kibet has definitely slowed down to join everybody else. they have maintained, I think, the pace and have just caught back up to him.
Let's listen a little bit to the women of Wellesley College doing their thing.
Now, see all those banners hanging from the side? They painted or made 650 of them at Wellesley College this year. I read an article that talked all about what they were planning to do.
That and probably adult beverages.
DeGeffa has absolutely pushed this pace enormously. Right now, through 20K, her time is 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 59 seconds. That's a 2 hour, 21-minute pace. Sensational stuff, given the fact that they started out so slowly. Let's see what happens to her in the Newton Hills.
A lot of women in the chase pack. And there's Des Linden, your defending champion, staying at the front. Now remember, if you haven't done your course preparation, are you prepared for the Newton Hills?
That's a good question. Or you haven't seen the course.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand. So roll the drums and stay tuned and don't go away from your TV set. We know she's great on the flats. She has absolutely torched the middle 10,000 meters or even 15,000 meters of this race after a relatively modest start for the rest of the pack. Look at her just kind of hold some of that water and just swallow it in small stages because of the breathing through the nose. She has been clicking off 5,000 meter splits as fast as 16 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, here in Wellesley, this is interesting.
They love their marathon at Wellesley. We go to Scott Wally. Scott.
With our women's champion, Manuela Starr, congratulations. You just blew the field away, and a good number of the men, by the way. How was it out there for you today?
It was a lot nicer than we expected, especially the weather. I was pretty worried about it when we drove to the start line. It was pouring down and windy, and yeah. But then it turned out to be so nice, and I'm really happy that I could actually I don't know how to say it in English, but yeah, that I could
win.
Yeah, win.
Were you expecting a more competitive race?
It's such a special course with that downhill at the beginning, so it's really my favorite part. But it's so early in the race, so I always plan on really making ground there. So to actually make it to the finish with that little bonus I could make downhill. So it's a race I hoped for.
And as we mentioned, you passed a number of men. Did they say anything to you by the way?
Well, you know, we all know each other, and it's like a family. So some of the guys, they made a little comment, which made me laugh sometimes also. But
you said bye-bye, see you at the finish line.
No, of course not. Smile says it all.
It surely does. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
In 2011, Geoffrey Mutai of Kenya set a new course record and a new world's best time of 2:03:02. Countrywoman Caroline Killel just outlasted America's Desiree Davila to win with a time of 2:22:36. The wheelchair division, however, had an emotional element all its own, with both men's and women's victories going to Japan. This just 5 weeks after an earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster struck Honshu Island, killing more than 16,000 people and causing an estimated $360 billion in economic loss. Masazumi Soejima finished ahead of Kurt Fernley and Ernst van Dijk, while Wakako Tsuchida captured the Boston title for a 5th consecutive year. What a moment, and what a way to begin recovery. At the time, I remember thinking, Larry, is this possible? Could this really happen? And it did.
It was a great story. I remember doing that event with you, Al, and we were talking about how amazing a tribute this was for those athletes to win in Boston and give a gift back to their country, which didn't have much to cheer about in the previous 5 weeks. Dathan Ritzenhein from the United States, 3-time U.S. Olympian, out there on the left of the screen, who was trying something very unique in this year. He said, I've trained for long stints, months and months building up for a marathon, and so often I've gotten injured. So he tried a microwave deal, 8 weeks of hard training. He's been healthy, the training's gone well. He's a 2:07 lifetime best guy, now 36. Let's see how his rest of his day pans out here. To just touch on De Geffer, her lead over the pack was 2 minutes and 26 seconds at the halfway point. And we'll get back to her in a bit. The men are running right around 2 hours and 8 minutes, and that's before things really start to develop. Let's see how quick this is going to be on this course. The trees are still, Al, the humidity's up a bit, the temperature's up a little bit, but it's going to be a quick race.
James O'Brien, how's our defending champion Yuki doing?
Well, interestingly enough, he's back with the lead pack, having been dropped approximately a mile ago. We had a big separation when Komplette took the lead. There was a lead pack of about 20 meters behind him. A further 40 meters was a second pack that included Yuki Kawachi. So just as we passed 15 kilometers, now Kawachi is back in the pack. You can see Ritzenhein and Jared Ward in the lead, but everybody's there, a pack of about 25, maybe 30 runners. Kawachi and 2 other Japanese right there in the midst of the fray.
So Kawauchi, can you see him back there at all?
Yes, I can see him in the pack.
He's in yellow. I'm trying to. Is he in this first pack that we're seeing, James, or where is he?
I believe he's right towards the back of that pack.
I think he's behind Greg on this.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we will.
I'm just looking through the binoculars at this point. Actually, you are correct. I do not see Kawachi. My apologies.
Hey, you know, you see what you see, and things happen quickly.
He was in the second pack that was dropped, and it appears he's gone further back.
We'll try and we'll follow that story and get back to everybody on that. Philemon Rono up front, Joffrey Karui, a lot of the people we expected, simply biding his time. Watch him because this is the way he runs. Lalisa DeCisa wearing the green multicolors on the right-hand side where the white stripe is. He's back just behind Karui in blue and green. This is a solid pace, but obviously many guys feel comfortable right now. I would expect there's a 15K split that they've just gone by, so they are, we'll get a calculation for you on that, but they are moving along at a very respectable pace. That's about a 3:05 pace that they've done, and the Newton Hills loom up in front here. They're not there yet, but that could break up this pack, I have to believe. $15K covered in 45 minutes and 45 seconds. That's a 2:08 marathon pace, 2:08.42 to be exact. So they're moving along at about a 3:03 per kilometer pace, and De Geffer just torching everybody. We cut away from her a while back. I thought Edna Kiplagat was making a move to get away from the rest of the pack or lead them up who wanted to come with her to see if they could gain on De Geffer.
Barbara Hebner, what are you thinking about this women's race right now?
Well, at the halfway point, De Geffer is 2 minutes and 27 seconds up on the pack. So they may have let her get a little too far away, but the hills will tell the story. At the moment, she's still looking good. She doesn't really look around. Her eyes are straight ahead. She's focused very much on what she's doing, and we'll find out soon if she knows what's ahead of her.
The athletes from Ethiopia, many of them live in the Addis area, but they also go up to an area called Entoto, out of the city, and that elevation just climbs up over 3,000 meters. and it's very high, and there are a lot of hills, and they do their speed training lower in the Addis area, which is still very high. But they just get to really rarefied air, Al. And of course, they grew up there. Their bodies are very used to that. They're track trained, many of them. Few of them go straight to road racing at, let's say, a half marathon. They start at a shorter distance and excel there.
All right, here's Yuki, and I don't think he's looking very good.
Right now, it appears that he is 29th in the race, Al. I don't know what the trouble is here. This is an early position in the race, 50 minutes in, to be that far back. We'll try and get you a locator as to how far back off the lead he is.
Maybe he just runs too much.
You know, but he's been doing it for a long time. He is now 32 years of age.
All right, so there's where Yuki is. It's weaved through the traffic, and you just look at those runners, and he's just not living in the right neighborhood right now.
There he is. There he is in the distance. So right now it appears he's about 30 seconds behind the lead group, which is so thick. Scott Overall from Great Britain, the man in front of him.
So the women have about another hour. The men are approaching the real challenging stuff in the 123rd Boston Marathon. So Larry, how would you handicap this right now?
I think the winner comes obviously from this pack. That's easy to say. It's not from anybody behind. The pace is modest, and it hasn't broken up yet, and we have to wait and see who the favorites are to break away, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't think that Karui, some of the people we highlighted, Lawrence Chirono should be up there, and DeCisa knows what he's doing on this course. He is really experienced in it.
Before the race started, you pointed to some of the men to watch and all the different championships that were in that group. This could be an epic showdown.
It could be. I mean, it's setting up for a great battle in the Newton Hills. I don't think they will maintain this pace, Al, with this larger group when they get to the Newton Hills. I just say that off history. It doesn't mean they won't, meaning stay together. But you almost never see the Newton Hills with a pack like this. People test and try and put on a surge. Some of the guys who are very top runners in great shape start to worry by the Newton Hills that guys who have great track speed, like Karui, who's run really fast, Dathan Ritzenhein in his earlier, younger days was great. There's guys who have very fast 5 and 10,000 meter times that are in that pack. You don't want to start sprinting down from Coolidge Corner the last 8K with those guys. You want to lose some of these guys. So that goes through your mind. How do I feel? Should I put a surge on? All it takes is one or two guys to say, I'm going to go. That's Jared Ward, a statistics professor from Brigham Young University, who is out there stepping up the pace a little bit. Ward's very savvy runner, has great experience, coached by former Olympian himself, the head coach at Brigham Young University, Eddie Eystone, and has had a great life himself in this sport.
Jared Ward of the United States has something on his mind strategically. Just over 54 minutes into the men's race, which is being watched by our James O'Brien.
can see, yeah, Jared is opening about a 10-meter gap right now, but everybody who you would expect to be in there is in there as we pass 11 miles, unofficially 54:20. Interesting to see Scott Feubel, Dathan Ritzenheim also in there. Looking particularly good, I think, is Hiroto Inoue, the Japanese runner to the right of your screen. But as you say, it's very difficult to pick who might be the stronger runner right here today, as Jared Ward appears to open his lead even more. He has about 15 meters on the field right now.
Back to the women's race we go. The Ethiopian Degefa completely in control. Her lead is holding steady, now at 2:28.
Yep, it's been just about the same for at least the last 5K, Al. She is clicking along very beautifully and looks totally comfortable, averaging 3 minutes and 20 seconds per kilometer for the race, and she is almost at the 25K mark. So she has completed about 60% of this course so far and looks in total control. Shetu from Ethiopia, Asefa, Caroline Rotich, a past champion here, but it has thinned out. Jordan Hasse just letting everybody do the work and tucking in behind everybody. Sharon Cherop, past Boston Marathon champion in white, is in there. Mare Dababa holding on beautifully.
Little teamwork there.
And off to the left, Desi Linden. Kind of surprised she's off on the other side of the road. The women have less than an hour left of the race based upon the pace right now of Worknesh Degefa up in the lead.
Larry, does Des Linden look good to you?
You know, I thought I saw her grimacing. I don't know if that's actually what I saw. I would be a little concerned at the separation that we see here. And it looks like she's trying to get back over to the group. I don't know the reasons. Edna Kiplagat looks totally comfortable. Kiplagat on the left of your screen, who has won New York, who has won Boston, has been 2 times a world champion, who has won the Abbott World Marathon Majors title twice, looks very comfortable, and she's the type of woman, Al, who makes one move. She doesn't go surge and test everybody and then fall back. She tends to wait and wait, and when she makes a move, the hammer goes down. Now, Des seems to be trying to work her way back up. The pace they're on is very good. These women are running at about a 2:23, 2:24 marathon pace, all of them, which is very solid running in Boston. And look at Des move up. Pretty serious look in the face here. I think Lower Falls, if they're starting that downhill, which they are, you can look at the can of the road. This is a very serious drop, and it's a smart way to run as far as I'm concerned. I was a cross-country runner. You always let yourself out in the downhill. There's no reason. You can use a downhill to recover. Your body and your pulse rate, if you speed up, does not go up, it goes down, because it takes less effort to drive off the downhill. Don't hold back. Don't land on your heels. Get up there and just let your body fly down the hill.
And we go to Barbara Hebner. What's on your mind?
Well, it's possible that Worknesh Degefa can hear Larry talk, because she did exactly that on this downhill into Newton Lower Falls. She ran mile 16 in 5 minutes and 15 seconds after running the previous mile in 5:34. So she put the hammer down on that hill, on that downhill, that is not where any of those other women are going to gain time on her, because she put a little extra on them, I think.
You know, you raise a good point about the hammer and the rest of them not gaining on her. At the last checkpoint, her margin had increased from 2 minutes and 28 seconds to 2:44. So she flew down that hill. Desi's trying to make things up right now. Look at how everything has opened up on the peloton that's behind Worknesh. But they are flying down that back hill. They are closing on the gap here, while De Geffe is climbing a long, almost half-mile hill. This thing is an underrated hill that De Geffe is on. It crosses over a major interstate coming into Newton from Wellesley. I grew up in Newton, and this is a pain-in-the-neck hill, and it goes on forever. And so these ladies right now are going through the downhill that De Geffe went through just 3 minutes ago.
And Barbara, everybody hears Larry talk. Well, Des Linden looks like she wants to get everybody going. And Jared Ward still at the front of the men's race, almost single file.
Lemmy Berhanu, past champion here in Boston, slowly coalescing up to Ward. Joffrey Karui says, you know, this pace is fine. I think I'll get up there too. And a man who's run two 2-hour and 4-minute marathons and was ranked 10th in the world last year, Lawrence Chirono, in 4th place. In this pack are 4 men who were ranked in the top 10 in the world this past year, starting with Elisa De Sissa, ranked number 6. This is a very solid, deep field here in Boston.
James O'Brien, how are you seeing it?
Well, Jared Ward obviously has conceded much of his lead with Lemmy Berhanu and Jeffrey Karui having closed the gap. But interestingly enough, Elisa De Sissa, past 2-time winner here, is biding his time in the pack, as he generally likes to do. He's always strikes very late in the race, but Jared Ward is responding to the magnificent cheers from the Wellesley, from the girls outside Wellesley College, known as the Tunnel of Girls. The noise is actually deafening, and Jared Ward obviously got a burst of adrenaline from that. He's opened up about 5 meters, but I don't think it's going to be significant, and I'm sure the pack will reel him in shortly, and then we'll see what unfolds. But at this point, I would say there's still all to play for, no clear favorite.
To me, Wellesley College is Boston's version of First Avenue in New York City.
Very well put. I like that analogy.
Let's talk about elevations of this course. You start off at the height of Hopkinton, then the start is almost all the way down to mile 9, then a slight climb for 2 miles, then the drop to lower hills, and that just sets you up for the punch that's coming in the Newton Hills.
Let me convert that while it's on the screen. That's 15K at mile 9. We're using American phrases here. And of course, you get in, just double it from there. If 30K is out at 18.5 miles, so you're almost up to Heartbreak Hill at that point. And De Geffe, by the way, we should give you the halfway split. 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 37 seconds. She is terrorizing this course. If she can hold that pace to the Newton Hills, and she may slow down some, that is very fine performance on a humid and slightly warm day.
So after Wellesley College, you hit the Newton Fire Station, then the Johnny Kelly statue, and then you really get into it. Past Lower Falls, and up you go. The history is everywhere. After Wellesley, Boston College, and then finally you can see the skyline of Boston.
What a great alma mater that was for me. Great school. And you had a son there yourself.
He did. Turned out okay. Just
Good.
like you did.
Huh. Well, when you're in a pack like this, you're a lot is going through your mind. Newton Hills.
You know, it looked like Des Linden tried to get something going at the front and get some support, but
I agree. I totally agree. But you know what she did do? There are several women who broke up after that big surge on the downhill that she did. We're down to what, 2, 4, 6, 8 athletes that I can count right now. Is it 8 or 9? It's 8 anyway. And the athletes that we thought had the best chance to be up there. I had an interesting conversation with American Jordan Hasse. She had a dropout very close to her 2 last Abbott World Marathon major races, including Chicago, where she had an injury very late. It was essentially a stress fracture, and there was a long healing process after the last one, and she had to take 2.5 months totally off, the woman on the right of your screen. She has had a brilliant start to her marathoning career. If you're not familiar with this American, 2 hours and 23 minutes in Boston 2 years ago, and then 2 hours and 20 minutes in Chicago. And everybody was looking forward with the anticipation before the injuries came about. And long story short, after a long conversation with her, or actually a fairly short conversation, she wound up saying, I think I'm in better than 2:23 shape, and I don't know if I can run 2:20, is what it came down to. Here she is, holding together really well. This is a flat stretch just before the Newton Hills, and they will make a right turn at the fire station in Auburndale and head up. It's called the Brayburn Hill for Brayburn Country Club, which is off to the right.
That's where the Geffa is right now.
Yes, that's correct. And I'm just trying to see if I can look at the cant and see where on the hill the Geffa is. She might even be towards, she's just turned at this fire station, okay.
And back to Barbara Hebner we go.
The Geffa just made the turn at the fire station and is headed up the first of the traditional Newton Hills. She is she's turned around a few times to see nothing behind her. She seems to be, she's gritting her teeth a bit on this hill. I won't say that she's looking fatigued, but she's definitely putting in a little more labor than she has been in the last few miles.
To get to your point, Barbara, the last stat we have is she's 2 minutes and 51 seconds up in the field. So ever so slowly she's lengthening the lead, but not dramatically. That's going to see, this is the second of the 4 Newton Hills. Her success will be determined by the time she gets to Heartbreak Hill, I think. There's a good chance of that anyway.
Right, I mean, this pack is not going to catch her, but there is still a fair chance that she's going to fall back to the pack if these hills are more than she bargained for.
Exactly right. I agree totally with you. I think this pack has more left in it, though. I think that they could move more quickly through the Newton Hills than she is doing. We'll see. They're going to have to if they have, you know, look, anybody can fall apart late in the race, but it is flat to downhill after you get through these hills.
Once again, Des goes to the front.
We'll give you the men's halfway split here. 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 27 seconds. So they're on a 2:09 pace, and somebody's going to start breaking up that group pretty soon, I think, too, in the Newton Hills. They're just all kind of just enjoying each other's company right now. Elkanah Kabet falling off the back. Several others close, but there's a very good chance the winner is going to come from that group up there. Inoue from Japan wearing the red vest. Geoffrey Karui setting the standard.
Once again, back to one of the subplots in this race and in some of the other great races around the world, the Abbott World Marathon Majors. One race already this year, Tokyo. Then there's Boston, obviously. then London, and this year the World Championships for the women and the men are included, and so is Berlin, Chicago, and New York, the Abbott World Marathon Majors.
Eshetu from Ethiopia, Rotich from Kenya, Kiplagat from Kenya, Asafa in blue on the right from Ethiopia. They have been dominating on the world scene in track and field. When you go to the top 10 rankings for men and women, it's unbelievable over a long period of years how they have constantly chipped away to just control the top 10 practically of men and women and their performances.
Larry, if DeGeffer is going to be vulnerable, would you say it's in the hills or right at the end of the 4 hills?
I think it could be more towards the end. You might see her stride change a bit, but it doesn't show that so far, Al. Believe me, she looks terrific. She's clipping along. She's almost up on the balls of her feet. She's driving forward. Her arm carriage has not dropped at all.
She looks a lot better than this group does.
She does. I mean, I think she runs that way, and she does look terrific. Now remember, she's, I think, on a flat stretch right here. She's not on the hills. The others are working on a hill. So your stride is shorter. You do more of a shuffle up a hill. They're not on comparable flat plane. I think they're cresting that hill right there for Braeburn. We now have 7 in the lead pack, down from 8 before that hill. DeGeffer approaching 30 kilometers into the race. If you're in England and you know miles, that's 18.6 miles is what she's passing very soon.
So far, DeGeffer of Ethiopia remains in control of the women's marathon here in Boston, Massachusetts. Well, we're waiting for the clock to show us a sign of weakness, and so far it has not.
Both countries export tea, coffee, and brilliant distance runners. And they're doing that again on the streets of Boston here this year. Jordan Hasse in there with maybe something to say about it, but this is the group of stars and the world scene as to the brilliance of these two countries with their runners.
We are not seeing Des Linden, the defending champion, in this lead or chase pack. She has dropped off, perhaps paying the price for those 2 or 3 times that she went to the front of the pack and tried to get something organized.
This may have to do with the hills and who's actually run 1 or 2 of them, but the gap has dropped from close at its high point of almost 3 minutes that DeGeffer had on everybody else, down to 2 minutes and 32 seconds. So the field now is 30 seconds closer with a good 8K to go in this race. Actually a little more than 8K.
The Dubai Marathon champion from 2017, top 5 finishes in Dubai again. Her personal best in Dubai again. And we can only say Dubai is not Boston.
No, that's correct. Dry weather, usually very cool temperatures. It is like a drag race over there. It is a very fast, flat course. I've seen the race, and you know, everybody gets a top time. It's done in January each year. They don't give out appearance money, Al. They just give you tons of money for first prize. By the way, $871,000 will be given to the elite athletes 1 through 15, including in that total will be prize money for masters and also for the wheelchair competitors as well. This is a very solid performance here, especially in my opinion, the 20K mark, considering that she is moving up with some hills in there. Her last 17 minutes and 2 seconds for 5K.
You are looking at Worknesh Tegefa of Ethiopia, who has a 2-minute plus advantage on a chase group that is starting slowly to make a little progress in her lead.
Geoffrey Karui on the men's side looking totally comfortable. That's his normal arm carriage. Elbows out, wrists tucked in close to his stomach. Philemon Rono looks fine. That's the kind of a unique rocking motion of Lalisa DeCisa, who was the Boston Marathon champion the year of the bombing in 2013. And when the bombing occurred and after his victory, he got home and he called up the BAA officials and said, I would like to give my medal back to the city. I am one with you in what happened in the city. And he came back to Boston and did that, and obviously touched a lot of hearts in the city with that gesture. Ran brilliantly, did DeCisa in New York, getting under 2 hours and 6 minutes, Al, on that tough New York City course. So he's fit. I've had a chance to spend time chatting with him, and you know, if he's right not up there on the podium, I would be very surprised here.
A lead men's group of 14. And here's one of your favorites, Larry, a 2:18 New York City Marathon champion, a 2-time champion here, which gives him an extraordinary edge after being a runner-up in 16 and 14 in New York City.
And he ran, Al, a very good half marathon, the Rock Half Marathon, over the winter, which gives a lot of the athletes that run a World Marathon Majors like this or some other top marathons around the world, it gives them a good indication of how fit they are. And he only finished 13th, but he's not a half marathon specialist. But his time right around 60 minutes gave him a good indication of where he was. And that indicated good fitness.
And there you see, right here, is our guy. How about Jared Ward hanging in?
You know, running a personal best that's right up there. I mean, hats off to him. Got a family, has children, statistics professor for a career. You know, just terrific, and has the benefit of training and living at altitude where you have that in Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. So all the characteristics, and a coach who really knows marathoning, having made the U.S. Olympic team as a marathoner, Ed Eyestone. His previous best, 2 hours, 11 minutes and 30 seconds, and these guys are clicking off at a 2:08 pace.
So this is the downhill to Lower Falls, and then the real game begins. It's the chaos of the feed zone.
Mohammed El Arabi, I should mention, is also up there from Morocco. Does his training sometimes outside of Rabat in the Atlas Mountains and gets good altitude. I mention altitude training because it really helps. I've asked some top coaches, how much does it really help you? How much does it help an athlete to go to altitude training? And they paused and really thought it over and said 1.5 to 2% faster for a world-class marathoner by going to altitude.
And 1.5% over 26.2 miles.
Right, and take the number of minutes and do the math that way. If you want, you're talking minutes of improvement. And of course, that can be a big difference. I just I'm watching DeGeffa here in the lower left-hand corner. I love these two boxes. And her stride to me is a little slower. I'm not sure I'm right, but she's moving well. She's fine, but it's not quite as crisp and quite as fast as it was 30 minutes ago.
All right, so the miles ahead for both the men and the women. Let's go back and show you what happened. First of all, in the men's wheelchair race. Dan Romanchuk, the 20-year-old from the United States.
Ernst Van Dyke there.
And the four-time champion Marcel Hoob. And off they went as the rain started to evaporate. But we would later hear from Daniel Romanchuk that the weather was definitely a factor in the first few miles of the race. And then touching the back of Ernst Van Dyke's ride. And that seemed to really irritate Ernst Van Dyke. Halfway mark, gaining 8 points for Romanchuk in the Abbott World Majors.
Masasumi Soejima was staying with him for quite a while, but could not maintain the pace of Daniel Romanchuk from the University of Illinois in Champaign. And it was all Romanchuk just powering away. And this 20-year-old showed his heels to everybody, Al.
And sets himself up to have a nice, long career like the Ernst Van Dykes and the Marcel Hoobs of the world. First American to win in Boston since 1993, Jim Knopf. All right. The chase pack is now 1, 2, 3, 4.
And they are in
5.
the Newton Hills. The hills go up about 600 meters. The second one flattens out for about 1,200 meters, and then at Newton City Hall you climb a sharp hill again that is about 400 meters, and then it plateaus again, and then you hit the fabled Heartbreak Hill, which is about 600 meters in length and height, meaning uphill.
Once again, I don't know how many times we've said this today, you cannot see another competitor in the picture. She is still buzzing. Now remember, this is the runner from Ethiopia that Barbara pointed out did not scout the course.
Let me touch on Betsy Saina, is the way she likes to pronounce her name, spelled S-A-I-N-A, but from Kenya originally. And she actually ran track over in Kenya in primary school, but did not choose to run it in high school. She said, I didn't want to run. So she did not do that, and it was after high school she started to run at 18 years of age, ran well, and had some connections, knew some people. They saw her ability, and she got a full scholarship to go to Iowa State University, where she excelled as an All-American in cross country and on the track as well. She trained back for this event over in Kenya for about 4 months. The great Roberto Canova is her coach, and she has had a very good start, having run 2 hours 22 minutes for a marathon.
Barbara Hebner out there.
DeGeffa is indeed starting to slow down. She ran that last mile in 5:45.
Wow.
Compared to 5:29 before that. And she's starting to just sort of fuss with her singlet, look at her watch more often. Just after mile 19, she actually crossed herself a couple of times and looked behind her.
Wow, that's great stuff. That's great stuff, Barbara. The slow down.
Right, she may hang on, but she is definitely starting to feel what she's put in here so far.
Yes, beware the person that looks at their watch very often.
Barbara, one question. Was that 5:45 done on a flat straightaway type thing, or no hill?
It would have been to be a partially flat, as you would have been still coming up the second hill and then hitting the flat. So it was a combination.
That's a 3:35 pace that had dropped down from 3:20 that she had been averaging, and doing that for almost 2,000 meters. these other ladies don't know that that's the story up in front unless some spectator tells them that that's what's on television and that maybe they're gaining.
Yeah, they certainly won't know it any other way because they're still way too far behind to see.
It'll have to be after they get to Cleveland Circle, right? When you've got about 8K to finish.
Yeah, that'll be the only chance because there's far too many hills and turns in this part of the course that even if they aren't gaining, they won't be able to see her until they make that turn. Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Over to the men.
Wow, look at the size of this group. This, Al, I don't know when I've seen a bigger group at this stage of the race or anything like this, really. It just seems to be a big pack. Dathan Ritzenhein kind of edging off that bus, so to speak, on the left-hand side of your screen.
Our James O'Brien is out there.
Well, yes, Ritzenhein certainly seems to have weakened a little bit. The climb over Route 128 was where we expected some of these leaders to start working a bit hard, maybe splinter apart, but that certainly didn't happen. Ritzenhein weakened a little bit, as did Shadrach Biwott, but they're both right there at the back of that pack, which has been led by Scott Forbel. Jared Watercourse is right there in the middle too, but everybody is hanging in there at this point in time, and it's very, very difficult to see who's feeling good and who's feeling a little bit under pressure at this point. DeSissa is right in the middle of the pack as well, so he's always dangerous.
All right, let the games begin, as they sometimes say in the Olympics, because we have just turned on to that Auburndale firehouse that I talked about, and now they are facing the daunting task of 3 more big hills. And this one is as long as Heartbreak. And we'll see if anybody puts a surge on. I should also highlight from Flagstaff, Arizona, Scott Cobble, the United States runner with his bib on there, who's got a lifetime best of 2:12.28, is running very well. And at this pace they're on, he's about 3 minutes under his lifetime best. Hats off to him for running so well with this lead group.
We'll get you back to this. Right now, we flash you back to the women's wheelchair race earlier today in this Boston Marathon. It turned out to be a tour de force for Manuela Schär right there of Switzerland. Not only did she stay in front of her competitors, but she passed numerous men along the way and never looked back.
And Schär overtook more men than I ever remember seeing a woman do. They start with a 2-minute differential between the two, but she just did very, very well. And the men get away first, and the women follow 2 minutes later. This is the famous right on Hereford, left on Boylston. And there's 600 to 700 meters to go when they make that turn.
So as she wins it for 2019, let's look at the finish for second place. De Rosario of Australia, McFadden of the United States. A little touch. That is close stuff. Schär wins the day, though. A time of 1:34.19, 13 seconds. 13 seconds off the course record.
Marathon, looking at his New York City Marathon prep, along
Two
with
wheelchair
his coach,
champions.
Ben Rosario, and he's known as the Burrito Cowboy.
So as the crowd settles in here on Boylston Street where we are for the 2 big finishes in the women's and men's marathon. Tegeffa still in front. Now she's in Boston.
She has passed Boston College, and she's on a flat stretch there, Al, which will then dip down in a little downhill phase to what's known in the Boston area as Cleveland Circle. She'll take a left, and it's a straight shot into town. And look what's happening here. Edna Kiplagat The woman known to make one move has said it's time to go. And what goes off in your brain is you know your body so well when you're a person like her who just makes one move. You know this course, you know how far it is to the finish line, and you know your pace that you've been on. And she has made up her mind that she can hold something much harder than what she's been running.
The gap is still holding. It's still 2:44. This is going to almost be superhuman if Edna Kiplagat could make this interesting.
But the chase is on, right?
DeGeffa still has enough respect for what's behind her, and she shows that by turning around pretty frequently.
The pace that Barbara talked about has been maintained, meaning the slowdown by DeGeffa as she came through the last part of the Newton Hills.
Here's Edna, the 2017 Boston Marathon champion, the two-time World Marathon gold medalist, and her best was 2:19:50 in London. So you know she knows Boston really well, which is something DeGeffa does not. The long strides of Edna Kiplagat in 2017. Down Boylston to victory. Can you mentally do the math, Larry? Can you still figure out if something is possible for us here today?
I think it is possible, and the wild card is never having run on a course this tough that I know of. Worknesh DeGeffa, it depends on how much she fades. Did she move too soon at a 2:20 pace? Did the hills take anything out of her, or is she okay? We don't know. But Edna is striding out very well and quickly here. Look at the gap that she has put on everybody as you pass Boston College's property. It's actually on the right-hand side of the TV screen and the left. And you will now head down one more hill, and then it's slightly downhill or flat right to the finish line. There is about 8 kilometers left in the race. Can she overcome a 2-minute 40 or 30-second pace? You would need DeGeffa to fade and slow down, and Edna to pick it up even more. It's hard to make up this much distance. But she is striding out. You can almost look at the picture of the two of them. This is great. And see the speed and the length of the stride of Kiplagat is much longer per step than what you're getting out of DeGeffa. She is moving. Now coming downhill to Cleveland Circle at this moment, I believe is DeGeffa. That's a bit of a downhill section there. And there's the MBTA. So, yeah, she's making a turn downhill here. She looks to me like she's moving pretty quickly. Cleveland Circle. You know, when you're as experienced, Al, as Edna is, and you make the one move, you're going as hard as you can right now. I'm talking about Edna Kiplagat. You know you're trying to reel in someone you can't see, but she is so skilled and knowledgeable at 39 years of age, and she's got such a magnificent career of great races. It's not like you're leaving anything on the table here because you're not psyched. She will push as hard as she can and hope on the straightaway. She knows where Cleveland Circle is, Kiplagat does, and she will hope she can see her then.
Look what Kiplagat did to the rest of that chase pack that she was in.
Buried them.
Gone.
But I mentioned it early in the telecast that she's a person who makes one move, and that's what she has done here.
Barbara, how do you see it? Well, we'll get back to Barbara Heber in a moment. One other thing that complicates things, the leaderboard electronic scoring system has been down, and it is now just come back up. It is back up.
The gap has shrunk just a little bit here. Edna has to really cut into this lead to some extent. It's down to 2 minutes 27 seconds that DeGeffa has on Kiplagat. and she's got to really start nailing this thing, even at a faster pace if she has a hope.
Last 3 split times for Worknesh DeGeffa. Slowing down in the hills.
Many.
And let's go back to Barbara Hebner. How do you see it?
Well, DeGeffa still sort of seems to be laboring a little bit more than she had earlier in the race, but she did, for the first time, sort of acknowledge the crowd around her when, just before she came into Cleveland Circle, she gave a wave to some spectators who had an Ethiopian flag fluttering on the sidelines. So she is still very much aware of what's going on around her, even though she's been pretty much eyes straight ahead all the way.
She is flying downhill as Kiplagat, doing the right thing. Just let yourself out and fly.
Look at the difference in the tempo.
Yeah, I mentioned that a little while ago. I agree with you totally. And yet it did not shrink down. Now it may have to do with who was on the hill, all that type of stuff. Now they're on the flats. We'll get a very good indication per kilometer of how much faster Kiplagat is going if that's the case.
Boy, did Kiplagat do a great job of tiptoeing around the puddles and the train tracks.
Right, exactly. I watched that too, Al. I was watching the same thing. All right, she knows where she is in this race course. She knows the course. And she has run on it here since she has been here, by the way.
So the day started with some serious rain, but now things have cooperated. And we wonder whether we have a showdown finish in the women's race or not.
That's a great shot on the left. You can see how far back and the margin Kiplagat has to go to catch.
This is the 2019 123rd edition of the Boston Marathon, presented by our good friends at John Hancock. And on they go in the streets of Boston. 26 miles, 385 yards from Hopkinton to Boylston Street.
While we're showing these masses, they are also raising charity. The Boston Marathon allocates certainly a significant number of charity runners that can come here. John Hancock has 1,500 of their own employees running here. And last year, the group and the other runners and the Hancock people raised $36.6 million. And Al, since they started charity running here in Boston in 1986, they have raised, after today, over $350 million for 36 charities.
That's a serious impact. Well, slowly but surely, the men's race dwindles down. Catching up to some of the slower women. Boston called Brookline. So you've gotten past Wesley College, you survived Newton and Heartbreak Hill, you make your way to Brookline. That's when Boston really starts to feel like a city again, when in Hopkinton it's about as rural as it gets. Coolidge Corner.
The body is an amazing instrument, it really is. Resting pulse for these well-trained athletes, Al, is in the low 40s, just sitting down on a couch or reading or something. And the pulse rate gets up to 4 times that during the race. And they can hold 160 beats per minute. And late in the race, when fatigue sets in, it even moves 10 to 15 beats higher to 170, 175, that they are so well trained that they can hold that. Blood flow through your entire body makes a cycle normally in a minute. These athletes right now in this race at this juncture, blood flow entirely carrying oxygen to their system, makes a complete cycle through the body in 6 to 7 seconds.
Wow.
Amazing. Listen to those crowds. 26 miles of a standing ovation. The gap shrinking, where both athletes are on the flats, down to 1 minute and 57 seconds. But De Geppe, closing in on the finish line, has about 3.5 kilometers to go. And it's going to take a Herculean effort for Edna Kiplagat to overcome.
All right, let's get back to our James O'Brien for some thoughts on the men's race.
Well, it certainly looks like we've got down to the main contenders at this point. Although we had a very large pack coming into the Newton Hills, we're down to about 7 guys right now. Scott Fauble was the most aggressive through the hills, but he seems to be paying for that right now, where he's conceded about 5 meters to this lead pack. In there, we've got the 2-time champion Lalissa De Sissa. We've also got Jeffrey Karui, of course. And we've also, excuse me, I'm just looking through my binoculars now as we speak. He's bouncing around just a little bit. Obviously, Lawrence Chirono's in there. Kenneth Kipkemoi, who we haven't mentioned, who was 4th in Chicago last year. So he's obviously a danger and somebody to watch. But even at this stage, see who among these guys might be the most forceful in these closing miles. But Jeffrey Karui certainly looks very comfortable.
Well, history says this is where your champion's coming from. This picture right here. Scott Fauble was the only American left, and he is not looking good out there on the right. So it's Karui, De Sissa, Rono, Rahanu, Kandi, Kipkemoi, Chirono, Talam, and Fauble barely hanging on. Fauble's hanging in there still. Jeffrey Karui, a runner-up, a champion in Boston in 2017, and a World Championships Marathon gold medalist in 2017 as well.
And the man who didn't want to run, he said, my brother's a really good runner. His brother tried to convince him to run track and field, and he said, no, I don't want to do it, and he pushed back for quite a while. His brother finally got him to try it, and he had instant success. And he is self-coached, is Karui, has a group of 15 people that he trains with and gives guidance to, and amazingly coaches himself. I'm very surprised at that at this level, but it has worked for him, and he's done very well on the track and in shorter races. He's got speed.
Crowd's getting bigger now as the finish line gets closer.
And also the populations are bigger as you get to Newton and then into Brookline. There's more apartment buildings and so forth, so I'm not surprised the crowds are bigger. I'm surprised we haven't seen anybody decide to try and break up even this group. It's thinner than it was when they started the first Newton Hill, but nonetheless, we still have 8 athletes in contention. And Scott Fauble, hats off to him. Dathan Ritzenheim from the United States appears not to be up in that pack anymore. Chirono holding on and looking comfortable, as is De Sissa. Notice how De Sissa, and he's done this repeatedly in Boston, doesn't take the lead until late in the race if he makes a move. He sits back like Edna does He never pushes the air aside. Air has density, so it takes energy to do that. And he always lets somebody else do it, which I think makes great sense.
And you saw him there slide behind
Yes.
the biggest body.
Look up on the screen back there, everybody. It may be too late, but Edna Kiplagat now knows where Worknesh Degefa is in this race. She can see her. Don't know if it'll make any difference, but, you know, the courage of Degefa, without looking at this course, as Al said, to go out there and break away was impressive.
Okay, so they're on the same road finally. Let's go to Barbara Hebner.
Yeah, we're around the 24-mile mark. Degefa just turned around again to see if anyone was behind her. And although she still wouldn't be able to see Edna, she might have just seen a flashing patrol car light. I'm assuming signals where Edna is. And if so, that's the first sign that either Degefa or I have had that there's someone coming up behind her.
There is about 3,500 meters left in this race. The gap has shrunk down now to 1 minute and 31 seconds. The question is, can she run, you know, per kilometer that much faster with just 3.5 kilometers to go? Very hard to do. She'd have to be 20 seconds faster, and that is a very tall order, Al.
Well, she's pretty tall.
I didn't think you were going to say that.
$75,000 difference between these two spots. $150 for number one, $75 for number two.
So they're running the last 3,000 meters for $75,000. And also, a lot of additional monies are at stake if you win Boston. If you go to other races, race directors want you as the Boston Marathon champion, and they will pay good appearance money. The Abbott World Marathon Majors is comprised of 6 different road races: Boston, Chicago, and New York, Berlin, London, and Tokyo, and they give millions of dollars of appearance money for these elite athletes to show up for their race. There is the prize money that's 5 deep. It goes 15 on the able-bodied, and so you get a very nice appearance fee to show up at another race. Doesn't have to be a marathon if you are a Boston champion.
So Degefa wins here in Boston, let's say, if she holds this lead. It turns into money here today, but then future monies.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in Ethiopia, that goes a long way, and in Kenya as well. Edna brought her 2 children over. She is, while we're looking at her on the left-hand side of the screen, a woman you can greatly admire. And I've mentioned the fact she has mentored many young. She has children of her own. Her sister died in childbirth, and she adopted that daughter. She has also adopted and helped out with 2 other children whose mother died of cancer, and adopted those children as well. That stride is, you know, I have to believe Edna is gaining here, but she may run out of real estate.
So once again, we celebrate the history of the Boston Marathon. This is what happened in 1994. The year was 1994, a year when course records fell in the men's and women's open divisions, and world records were set in the wheelchair races. Cosmos Ndeti of Kenya lowered the course record to 2:07:15, while Uda Pipik set the women's standard to 2:21:45. The wheelchair athletes were even more impressive. For the 5th consecutive year, Jean Driscoll had a world record to win the women's wheelchair division, while Heinz Frey of Switzerland set the men's world best, marking the 12th time the record had been established in Boston. Once again earlier today in the wheelchair division, Daniel Romanchuk, a 20-year-old American, won Boston, first American to win here since 1993, and Manuela Schar wins in Boston for a second straight time. Wow, was she awesome.
With a mile to go in the women's race.
So the women's race has a mile to go. DeGeffa's still there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lead the men's race. I thought Scott Fauble was done.
They are coming down, I think, the last hill there and about to turn on at Cleveland Circle. And you can see everybody's just let their stride out and the paces. Fauble running the race of his life. Just a career day for Scott Fauble from the United States, who trains up at altitude. We're talking about 2,500 meters of elevation. The gap now has shrunk down. Kiplagat is now 66 seconds behind, but there's 2,000 meters left to run for Worknesh in her battle to become the Boston Marathon champion of the 123rd running of the Boston Marathon.
Now, how is it conveyed to her, if at all, what her situation is?
You mean to Edna?
Yeah.
It would have to be somebody yelling her that she hears that you're closing in or something. I'm going to guess somebody who happened to be at home watching the race and listening to what was on television and then letting her know, you know, she's fading or saying something like that. At this point, she knows she's gaining. Once you get to Cleveland Circle, it's all on Edna to look up and notice the gap shrinking and have like, look at this. Look at this. But I think she's going to run out of real estate. We'll see.
It's going to make Boylston Street pretty interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
And in that shot, Edna's body just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Hats off to DeGeffa, though. She's ran 2:17 on a perfectly flat, wonderful course. That is just a tremendous performance and very, very fast to average that. 3 minutes and 15 seconds per kilometer for 42 kilometers. Like, holy gosh, what a performance. She had been averaging in the neighborhood of 2 hours and 21 minutes, but her pace has slowed down here. We'll have to get an idea of what her finishing time is and try and tell you where she stands in Boston.
Worknesh DeGeffa on the verge of a career changer.
She's running right now, Al, around, I would guess, 2 hours and 23 minutes if you allow from a slowdown of 2:21 and some of the Newton Hills that she struggled with.
It feels like Edna is right there, because the shot prior to this was DeGeffa going under this very same tunnel on Mass Ave.
She is from the RC region, which has produced Haile Gebrselassie and Kenenisa Bekele, and many great runners come from the RC province. In America, we have states. In Switzerland, they have cantons. And in Ethiopia, they call it provinces. But the area she's come from has just produced an inordinate number of brilliant runners like her. And it should be all hers. Worknesh DeGeffa shows the way here today with courage and moxie as she just breaks away from everybody early in the race without even looking at the course. Edna's really run very, very well here, but I don't think she's going to be able to reel her in.
She hasn't made the left turn onto Boylston yet. So DeGeffa will have the street to herself, the day to herself. They just let the gap get too big, Larry, right?
They did, absolutely right, Al. And it went from almost 3 minutes down to, let's say, something like 30 seconds. She cut into her lead. I'm just taking a guess, but by 2.5 minutes maybe at a max. And running strongly. I mean, this is good, powerful leg strides right now. DeGeff has picked things up. She sees the finish line. This grade, this last 600 meters, is slightly downhill. And there's Edna, still closing, still galloping along at a great pace.
This is amazing. Actually, both performances are amazing.
Yes, they are. On a a warmer day than normal by probably something like 8 or 10 Celsius from ideal conditions. Hot weather saps you more than cool weather. Or cold weather. Up in the picture we saw just a minute ago, Kiplagat waving to the crowd. I think she knows she can't overcome her. It's too big a lead, and she's done what she can, but nonetheless, she closed very well. But DeGeff, world class, just nailing a great marathon again this year.
DeGeff wins in Boston 2019. And Kiplagat with an unbelievable charge. I think maybe she was just saluting the crowd and thanking them for their effort.
39 years young. Wow. The Olympics have been won by a 37-year-old man. When you go back to Carlos Lopez in '84, look what she is doing right now at 39.
Jordan Hasse coming in third. How about that? But Kiplagat made the day interesting, and considering she trailed by 3 minutes, that is as remarkable as it gets.
And she is happy. What an amazing talent she has been for the sport. And Jordan Hasse, look at this. The young lady who was out for 2.5 months with really stress issues in her leg and could not train at all and did not start back until November of this year. And she said to me, I said to my coach, Al Salazar, I'm going to go out for a 5-mile run at a pace that's really fast. And she said, I crawled home and I was almost a minute slower for each mile and 30 seconds plus. And she said, oh my God, I looked at how far I have to come. But she said, I have had some great workouts recently, with a big smile on her face.
Well, you have to figure Des Linden's success last year helped created this third-place finish for Jordan Hasse of California, USA.
She is setting the standard and is right now the woman in the top of the heap, so to speak, of American distance running at the marathon distance. She had a fabulous high school career, and it hasn't stopped since those days.
Sefa in fourth. All these were the members of the totally splintered chase group. And we've got a pretty good finish coming up in the men's race as well. And last year's champion Des Linden in fifth.
You know, one thing quickly to say, they've changed the Olympic standards to qualify to get in. They've lowered them to faster times. Both Des and Jordan Hasse, based on their finishes here, have a fast enough time to qualify to represent the United States at the Olympics. You have to do that now based on a fast time. And a top 10 finish.
Great atmosphere here at the finish line. The area is loaded with restaurants and bars. Newberry Street, which is the real center for that, is just next door. This is a great place to be right now in Boston, Massachusetts on Patriots Day.
She seems quite emotional about this.
Well, this is the kind of finish she had so many times and then came last year.
In Boston, let me make a correction, only the top 10 finish counts in men and women to qualify. And Rob Friedman, who is with John Hancock and been their sports events marketer for years and is about to retire after a fabulous career, gives Des a hug.
Worknesh Degefa comes across the finish line, says thank you to a higher power, and wins Boston in 2:23:30. We're going to try and talk to her. Apparently she's not feeling too well. Who could blame that? So, Toronto, Kip Kamoy, Lalisa DeCisa. As Larry said, all day long, all he does is lurk.
Good way to put that, Al. And where is Joffrey Karui since we last visited? Back off the bus, it looks. Oh, there he is. You couldn't see him with the top three till that camera angle. So he's stalking them, but he's a few steps behind, as is Lalisa DeCisa, stalking. Letting Kenneth Kip Kamoy take the push the pace, as Lawrence Chiromo is as well. I don't see Joffrey Karui able to respond here. The pace is ever so slightly quickening. Kamoy is the leader of this little small delegation of three.
James O'Brien, how do you see it?
Well, as you can see, it's certainly come down to a three-man race here, courtesy of a 4:31 mile between 23 and 24, that with Jeffrey Karui as the aggressor, who's paying for that now, and we're down to Kip Kamoy, Chirono, and DeCisa. DeCisa, of course, affecting his customary tactics of just sitting in, but they are really blazing now. Kip Kamoy, fourth in Chicago last year, has taken the initiative. Chirono, the fastest man in the field, hanging alongside, fastest man on paper, but DeCisa, two-time defending champion, looks as dangerous as he always does. He's in his favorite position now as we're coming into the closing miles of this race.
So, James, as you know, one of the things you sit here and say is DeCisa says I'm in the best shape of my life, number one. He ran 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 59 seconds on a tough New York course. Chirono ran 2:04 and just a few seconds more than 2:04 on a flat course. Which is better? And we're about to find out here. That time that you say for a mile, that's almost 2 kilometers, was around 2 minutes and 49 seconds per kilometer for 2K. And boy, that'll drop a lot of people, especially late in the race. DeCisa marking time, looking like he's under no stress at all. Kip Kamoy running a fabulous race. He's run 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 44 seconds on the fast Rotterdam course last year. And he trains up in Eldoret. Which is kind of the seat of the Rift Valley, which is at altitude where most of the great Kenyans come from, up in that valley, and that's where they train. They have great weather, it's dry, it's beautiful most of the year. They have very soft, nice roads to run on, and it is just a plethora of great runners come from there. 14 minutes and 28 seconds for the last 5K, 35 kilometers to 40 kilometers. That is tremendous time. This is the break open. I thought someone would move sooner than this, and 3 guys are left. That's an average of about 2 minutes and 53 seconds per K that they are just firing along here as they approach the Boston Marathon finish line. Less than 1,500 meters to go.
Is often seen in a race like this, the more dangerous runner is the one in second.
Said like a knowledgeable track coach, Al.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. He's marking his time. Again, it takes a little bit of energy to move that air aside, and running smartly, letting them do the work is DeCissa.
And not only that, in a way, it's got to irritate the other two.
Yes, you're right. In other words, but it's each man for himself. As we say, $150,000. That's what this race is about for the last 1,000 meters or so. And it's two Kenyans versus one Ethiopian. You know, that just adds to the competition aspect of what you're talking about. And they're about to turn left right now with about 600 meters to go.
Well, we know the
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's a little more than that. They're dipping down. They will come up and then turn right. So they have maybe 1,400 or 1,500 meters left. Maybe a little less than that. This is downhill. Now they go up a little uphill. See if they can put any separation on DeCissa when they climb this next 80 meters or so right here.
See the people who parked on Massachusetts Avenue and just peer down from the bridge. The move is coming.
Great works are accomplished athletically, not by strength, but by perseverance. Three have persevered. Who's going to have the most left here? Wow. You don't see this very often. You see two runners in world-class marathoners like this, occasionally three, but not in Boston. The last 3,000 meters covered at a pace of 2 minutes and 52 to 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Look at DeCissa making his move. He knows this course better than the other two do, and he must feel that he's got to let it all out right now. Now, can someone outkick him with raw speed is the question. Chirono has done that in other races earlier this year, in Dubai, for example. I'm sorry, in Amsterdam.
Ethiopia is having themselves a day, aren't they?
They are.
But starting to string out a little bit, but wow, what a great race.
So here they come, the three still together. Lalisa maybe jumped out too soon. We talked about the man in second.
Al, I think he made the move, his right move there, feeling that he's got to worry about their speed and what do they have left, and he's cranked up as hard as he can go right now, and the question is, can they hold his pace for 600 meters? I don't know the answer, and maybe they don't either.
He and Chirono look like they're side by side.
It's the camera, I think, right now, the angle. Yes. Oh my goodness, look at this finish.
Lalisa DeCissa in front by about 3 feet.
Lawrence Chirono with him.
Chirono's not giving up. One last push. Side by side they are right now. One last lunge. What's left in your soul? And it's going to be... Chirono takes it. And it was the guy in second place who finishes first.
The agony of defeat.
And there's Karui. A good minute back. Karor.
Felix Candy in front of him.
So Kenya edges out Ethiopia.
And boy, that's the right phrase, edges. Certainly as close a finish as I can recall. There have been a couple of others that were that close.
Somebody is down. Lawrence Chirono. the Boston Marathon champion. Physically, he paid the price.
And a great race for Scott Bauble from the United States, 2:09.11, a personal best by over 3 minutes.
And now Jared Ward, former Olympian.
And
Jared Ward.
Talon.
And he has a...
And that was Jared Ward. I don't know if he got to the finish line ahead of him, but look who's full of run.
What a
Lawrence
recovery.
Chirono. It's great to acknowledge the fans like that. That is great.
A minute ago, he was down and out, and now he's ready to keep going.
Presenting the wreath today, our governor, Charlie Baker. And presenting the perpetual trophy is Gloria Ratti, BAA governor and vice president.
James Quambai had great success on this course, and he is the coach of Lawrence Chirono. I'm sure he talked at length with him about the course and what could be accomplished. This certainly, upon reflection, is one of the two closest finishes in history. It's easy to say. You go back to the year 2000, and Elijah Lagat and Gezahai Nabera had virtually a photo finish that year, and we have had a host of finishes that have occurred within 5 seconds of each other, including 1988 with a 1 second differential. That was less than a second. My goodness.
Kibet, the soldier who was leading for a time. Inoue of Japan, he was in the mix there for a while.
The tough part of this sport, it's not like soccer or a baseball game or something else where you can play the next day or the next week. You prepare for 3 to 6 months to try and get your body in peak shape for a race of this magnitude, over 42K. And then you have to give it time to rest for maybe weeks or a month afterwards and jog easily. And then you start to build up for another long period of time. So the agony of defeat can be painful for a long time, or the thrill of what you've accomplished. This is the competitiveness. Look at Kibet saying, I'm going to get Inoue. I'm going to get him.
And he's going to get him.
Yes, he is.
Well, they packed the place real nice here today on Boylston Street next to the library and Copley Square. This should be fun. Here's the finish one more time.
Now remember, folks, this is a marathon. Look at this. Right there, he knew he could not catch him.
Oh, but Cisa had nothing left.
Well, he eased back. I'm just saying he knew that he either could see him pulling away a bit, he did the best he could, and he conceded, in effect, with 4 steps to go.
And we return to Scott Wally.
Here we are with the champion, Lawrence Chirono. What an unbelievable finish. Can you describe what that final sprint was like?
To me, it is something amazing. It was not easy because actually I used not to be quick in kick, but this round I did my best. It was so amazing to me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's go over to the women's ceremony.
So this is about to be the women's championship ceremony with the laurel wreath. More finishers from the women's race. There's a gold medal there. Nice looking trophy and a check for $150,000.
longtime Boston Athletic Association board member Gloria Ratty holding the beautiful trophy.
And the champions say hello.
Tom Grilk on the left is the leader of the BAA day-to-day as the CEO, done a terrific
Time now
job.
for our award presentation for your women's champion, Worknesh Degefa of Ethiopia.
That laurel wreath
Presentation
comes all
of the
the way
wreath from
from
Governor
Greece
Baker.
and especially made for the male and female winners of the Boston Marathon and flown over here, and then dipped in gold when it gets here.
And now the national anthem of Ethiopia. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2019 Boston Marathon Women's Champion, Worknesh Degefa of Ethiopia.
So once again, here are the final results in the women's version of the 2019 Boston Marathon. Worknesh Degefa 2:23:31. Edna Kiplagat made it so interesting trying to come back from 3 minutes down just to fall short by 40 seconds.
Yeah, 42.
Yeah, 42 seconds. Jordan Hasse of the United States finished third. All right, Larry, let's go through the day as your defending champion was Des Linden. And there was Edna Kiplagat appropriately in the front row, and they would make things happen.
And let's salute all of the 30,000, the only marathon in the world you have to qualify to run except for charity entrance, and the elites that are invited here. And it was early, the pace that was kind of pedestrian for these runners in the ensuing opening 10K, but it became Worknesh Degefa Day here in Boston. She pulled away and built her lead up, Al, to almost 3 minutes at one point. She lost some time in the Newton Hills. Edna Kiplagat decided it was time to go, and she broke up the Peloton group that had been running together and closed down from 3 minutes to 42 seconds. Once she got on the flats with 8K to go, she could see where Degefa was, and she kept gaining on her, but ran out of real estate. Congratulations, Ethiopia, a great day in Boston on the women's side. Edna was thrilled, and so weren't the Americans, with a third-place finish and a fifth-place last year's champion Des Linden, and also in third place, Jordan Hasse from the U.S. It was Degefa Day in Boston.
Earlier, Scott Wally spoke to the winner.
With Worknesh Degefa, and congratulations. Her interpreter, Brooke, who told me that your coach told you to just go, and you did.
አሰልጣኝሽ እንድትሮጪና ፈጥነሽ እንድትሮጪ እንደነገረሽ እንደነበረ አውቃለሁ። እንዴት አረግሽ ነው የሚለው።
አሰልጣኝ በእርግጥ አጠገቤ የለም። አሰልጣኝ ባለቤቴ ነው። ባለቤቴ ቪዛ ስለተከለከለ እዛ በመቅረቱ በጣም ማዝኜ ነበር። ግን አሸንፌ ተመልሼ እንደሚሄድ አውቄ ነበር። ያው እኔ ሁሌም ፈጣኝ የሆነ ነገር ስለሚያሰራኝ ባለቤቴ ፔሱ ሲቀዘቅዝ እኔ እግሬ ስለሚደነዝዝ ያው በራሴ ፔስ ሄጄ ብሸነፍም ብዬ ነበር የሄድኩት። ያው ከ35 ኪሎ ሜትር በኋላ ግን እንደማሸንፍ እርግጠኛ ሆንኩኝ። በቃ ደስ እያለኝ የመጣሁት ማለት ነው።
She said a mouthful there.
Yes. My coach is my husband. He trained me very well. And unfortunately, he didn't get a visa. But he take me my advice. He also said, "Oh, you can push. You have a good speed. When you feel comfortable, just go." Which is I knew after I passed 35K, I feel I can win.
From Kenya, our 2019
So many of these runners remind us how big the world really is. Almost set for the men's ceremony, and he's getting a little slow getting into position. Who can blame him? That was one crazy sprint finish. The Boston police on the case.
You'd be amazed how educated about running and marathoning everyone is in Boston. The police, you name it, anybody. They're totally into this event. And they know it. They understand it. You tell them what time you ran, whatever it is, and they get it. And they'll say, oh, that's great because of this.
The national anthem of Kenya.
That's the mayor putting the wreath on. Dr. Michael O'Leary, the chairman of the board of the BAA, making the presentation.
2019 Boston Marathon men's champion, Lawrence Chirono from Kenya.
So Lawrence Chirono saves it for Kenya, but by 2 seconds on this leaderboard. Elisa DeCisa, Kenneth Kemoe, Felix Kendi, Jeffrey Karui, Philemon Rono, Scott Fauble of the United States. Man, it looked like he was going to fade, and all he did was hang around, and that's exactly what fellow American Jared Ward did. And that is your 2019 Boston Men's Marathon. So how would you summarize the day, Larry?
I think that they ran well time with a winning time of 2:07 and change, given the fact that the temperature was significantly, probably, Al, something on the order of 10 to 12 Celsius warmer than is normal for this time of the year. The humidity also takes its toll out there. I mentioned cold weather, not as brutal as last year, but temperatures of, much colder than this, probably 10 or 15 Celsius colder would have made this race 1 to 2 minutes faster or more. But so I thought they did well given the conditions. The weather improved as the weather forecaster said it would in a complicated forecast. We can be grateful that we had the weather we did. There was lightning in the area before the event. This race has never been stopped for weather in its history.
Today
it might have been.
The men's race was so different from the women's race. It took so much longer to reveal itself. Loaded with former champions of this marathon and others. There's your defending champion, Yuki. And off they went with the rain having finally given way. And then there was a chase group that developed, Larry, that stayed together for a long, long time.
You're absolutely right. I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger chase group head into the Newton Hills. And I think it spoke to, Al, the 2 hour, 8 minute pace trying to break things up was Elkanah Komplette, formerly of Kenya, a U.S. citizen now, who pushed the pace, then fell back into the pace later in the race. Jared Ward tried to move things along, and eventually the pack just kind of coalesced up to him again. Lemmy Berhanu, past Boston Marathon champion, same with Karui, decided to step on the accelerator late in the race, and they stretched things out. They were at this point through the Newton Hills that you're looking at, and the race was really taking shape here, led by Karui, but he was unable to maintain it all the way. And with 2,000 meters to go, he started to fall back again. And look at the battle that ensued here as the athletes headed down the home stretch. It became Chirono and Lalisa. Look at this finish, unbelievable.
2 seconds officially. You know, Lalisa sat behind and sat behind and sat behind, and most times that's the way you slingshot in front, but he didn't have enough after the slingshot. Lawrence Chirono, champion for 2019. One of the closest of all time. They said Lagat and Abera were virtually even. Hussein and Ikanga, 1 second. Rogers and Wells, 2 seconds. Salazar Beardsley did the same thing, and so did Chirono and DeCisa. Now that one in 2000, they both finished in 2:09:47. They broke it up by a whisker.
And the pain of finishing 17th is etched on the face of Yuki Kawauchi, last year's champion. It'll be interesting to hear what he has to say afterwards. He doesn't usually struggle this badly after a marathon. He has been absolutely Superman, as I called him in our piece that we paid tribute to last year's athletes. But obviously something was going on, and he had a tough day at the office, so to speak.
I'll tell you one thing all these runners endured that we never really saw when we came on because the rain had stopped. But, you know, you prepare yourself, you prepare yourself, you prepare yourself, and then you get to the door of the hotel to get on the bus, and it is a monsoon with the wind howling, and you think how your day is ruined, and you somehow have to get through that, and oh, by the way, you're drenched.
I just want to pay tribute while we've got a second, a great time to do it, to these athletes that are out here now. They all work, many of them have families. The family support is tremendous. The spouses have to take care of the kids, and they have to put their miles in to qualify to run Boston. They all achieve this goal. The families usually come to cheer them on. It is a bucket list item and something that they will never forget. And to all of the 30,000 plus runners that qualified for Boston, you have to qualify, Al, by 5-year increments of your age, and you apply your time, and not everybody gets in. So it is a testimony to the people who have trained this hard to qualify, and we salute them all for what they've achieved. It is, you know, you measure your success by what you paid to get here, and it's just an enormous achievement that they can be proud of for the rest of their lives. Well, I've had companies that I've worked for say, if anybody runs a marathon, I want to meet that guy because of his discipline, goal setting, time management, and the rest. They know that there's some wonderful characteristics with people that put this effort forth.
I'm so thrilled that that duo that we caught a glimpse of 3 or 4 times today is making their way to the finish line.
Imagine the story if it could be told of that duo.
Yeah. That's going to just about be a wrap on our coverage of the 2019 123rd edition of the Boston Marathon. It is presented by our good friends at John Hancock. It all started in the rain and continued the traditions. The spirit remained strong, and we loved seeing a smile again from Medka Plesky. We had the flyer to fly over to signal things to begin, and begin they did with the wheelchair division, the push rim, and the sportsmanship. Our champions were crowned, and their days, in this case of domination, were celebrated. It seemed appropriate that the sun shined on her. The former champions came back to keep the chain going. The elite women had one fantastic performance that was better than the rest. And that's how we celebrated the 123rd edition of the Boston Marathon. Wherever you watched it in the world, thanks for joining us.